Chapter 2095. Lun, Yifeng Ru didn't even have time to say it. Boom! A violent fluctuation of Xian Qi rushed towards Yifeng Ru like a hot knife through butter. Yifeng Ru was still teasing Yifeng Yu when he saw Yifeng Yu suddenly attacking him. That powerful Xian Qi was obviously trying to take his life. Yifeng Ru's face changed and wanted to avoid it. But it was too late. The palm strike, filled with rage, landed heavily on Yifeng Ru's chest. Yifeng Ru was like a broken kite, flew out and fell heavily on the ground, spitting out blood. He stared at Yifeng Yu in disbelief. The boy who had always been a yes-man actually dared to fight with him? Actually, really wanted to kill? No one is allowed to speak ill of my sister. Yifeng Yu's angry voice was covered with ice. Anger, monstrous anger, burned in his heart. He couldn't wait to completely burn everything that hurt Yi Qing Luo. Yifeng Ru gritted his teeth, then suddenly let out a hearty laugh. I just said a few words about that little bastard, and you really want to take my life? And you still dare to say that you don't have any improper thoughts about that little bastard? His eyes were scarlet, and he couldn't stop laughing. Yifeng Yu, that lowly bastard has a whole bunch of different men by her side. You alone aren't enough to enter her eyes, right? Ha ha ha! Yifeng Ru's laughter. It was extremely harsh, piercing the murderous intent in Yifeng Yu's eyes. He flipped his palm, and a long sword unknowingly appeared in his palm. He rolled up a sword wave and gently waved it. The sword light was like a blooming firework. Layer by layer, wave by wave rippled in the air. Yifeng Ru's pupils contracted. The smile on his face also froze. That sword power followed the air, surged, and shot straight, blocking all of Yifeng Ru's escape routes. This is... Yifeng Ru was terrified to the extreme, and he kept shrinking back. Yifeng Yu's eyes were cold, murderous intent filled his eyes. The sword light in his hand crisscrossed, without any intention of mercy. Bang, 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 boom, boom, boom. The sword power was full of power. The ground shook under the sword chi. A thin crack appeared. Yifeng Ru let out a terrified scream. He had nowhere to run, nowhere to run. She could only close her eyes and scream in fear. The strong wind brushed against his face like a sharp blade, constantly cutting his face. His body felt like it was being swept up by the sword wave and was about to be devoured by it. But after that powerful wave of chi swept past, Yifeng Ru didn't feel the pain of being torn to shreds like he had imagined. He was overjoyed. Could it be that someone had come to save him? Yifeng Ru's eyes snapped open, and he looked around with wild joy. The smile on his face froze again. There was no one around him. There was no so-called rescuer. He half knelt on the ground. The ground around him was densely packed with cracks like a spider web. It was the mark left by the sword wave. Yifeng, you didn't kill him. The feeling of thinking that he was going to die, but being rescued from the jaws of death instantly surged into his heart. Yifeng Ru lay limp on the ground, gasping for breath. He was overjoyed. As expected, Yifeng Yu couldn't bear to kill him. Yifeng Yu, that silly boy, still had affection for the Yi family in his heart. He couldn't bear to, and didn't dare. The feeling of surviving a disaster, and the feeling of being sure that Yifeng Yu didn't dare to kill him. Chapter 2096. Yifeng Ru, you are the one who is dirty. Don't think that everyone is as dirty as you. The young man's immature voice was filled with a cold, murderous intent as he said it word by word. Yifeng Ru was stunned as he raised his head stiffly and looked at the young man who was riding on the back of a black leopard with a long sword in his hand. The young man's aura was majestic. His navy blue brocade robe was fluttering in the strong wind. Yifeng Ru suddenly had an ominous premonition spreading in his heart. Sister is right about one thing. A person's heart is dirty. Whatever he sees is dirty. Yifeng Yu said coldly. I want to verify the truth of this sentence. Yifeng Ru, let me dig open your heart and see if your heart is dirty. Just as he finished his words, Yifeng Yu's figure had already appeared in front of Yifeng Ru. He raised his long sword and pointed it at Yifeng Ru. Do you know why I didn't kill you now? Because I want to torture you. He said it very slowly, word by word, enunciated very clearly. The long sword in his hand, bit by bit, scratched Yi Fengru's skin. The cold touch faintly felt a stab of pain. There was a warm liquid seeping out from the stab of pain. Yi Fengru didn't dare to move as he looked at Yi Fengyu in horror. He couldn't believe that this overbearing, devil-like young man in front of him. Could it be that easily soft-hearted, silly, and stupid Yi Fengyu? It's him. Stimulated Yi Fengyu's growth? There was no time for Yi Fengru to think of other ways to escape. Yi Fengyu's torturing long sword had already fallen on his body, powerless to resist. The pain was unbearable. After Yi Qing Luo was injured, she fought more and more bravely. Out of the 100 over black-robed men, there were only 60 over people left. The ground was littered with corpses, blood flowing everywhere. The remaining 60 over people, the more they fought, the more terrified they became. At this moment, their hearts were filled with curses. How could this young lady be so abnormal? One person, just one person, she killed half of them. This young lady was as cunning as a loach. Over 100 people tried to catch her, but still couldn't. Most importantly, the fan in the girl's hand was too strange and terrifying. In the blink of an eye, there would always be 1 or 2 people who fell stiffly to the ground. Even in death, they still did not understand. How did they die? They finally understood why their lord had sent so many people to capture a 15-year-old girl. More than 60 people did not dare to act rashly. Yi Qing Luo gripped her glower flame fan tightly as she scanned the surroundings vigilantly. That beautiful face that could topple cities was extremely pale. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. She tensed her body and emotions, not daring to relax in the slightest. In the eyes of those 60 over black-robed men, Yi Qing Luo's expression was calm. Apparently she could still fight for another few hundred rounds. But Yi Qing Luo herself knew. She was about to run out of energy. She was just a person with a mortal body. Not to mention that they were facing so many profounders from other planes. It was already incredible that she could hold on until now. She could not reveal the fact that she had exhausted all of her strength. She could not give the other party any chance to take advantage of her. 60 over black-robed men, bit by bit, narrowed the encirclement of Yi Qing Luo. They exchanged a look. She could not drag on any longer. Chapter 2097. Yi Qing Luo was indeed abnormal. But after such a long battle, Yi Qing Luo was more or less exhausted. They didn't believe it. They couldn't even deal with a 15-year-old young lady after so many years. Go! One of the black-robed men gave his order. 60 over black-robed men covered the sky as they charged forward. Yi Qing Luo's heart tightened when she heard that word. She gripped the glower flame fan tightly as her eyes squinted, reflecting a cold, murderous intent. The profound qi in her body revolved wildly. The young lady's red dress was like a dancing butterfly. Between the fluttering wings, the layers of profound qi ripples in the air continued to spread to the surroundings. This wave of profound qi swept. Those 60 over black-robed men's expressions congealed. They were just about to retreat. However, the spreading Xian wave suddenly disappeared in an instant. They were stunned. Yi Qing Luo's profound qi had started to become unstable. Could it be? Yi Qing Luo couldn't hold on any longer? This knowledge made the black-robed men ecstatic. They immediately raised their swords and charged towards Yi Qing Luo's direction. How could they possibly miss such a great opportunity? Clang! Those few black-robed men who charged forward had yet to get close to Yi Qing Luo. They only felt a numbing sensation on their arms. Their weapons left their hands. Following that, they could only see a red shadow appearing in front of them. They heard the sound of a fan opening and closing. The next moment, their bodies turned cold. After that, they lost all feeling. But those black-robed men who charged towards Yi Qing Luo saw it with their own eyes. Those few black-robed men who were in front. Inexplicably, their limbs split. Blood splattered on their bodies. This scene made those black-robed men's faces revealed a horrified expression. This cruel method was done by this 15-year-old young lady. They didn't even see her make a move. As it turned out, the fluctuation of profound qi just now was caused by the sudden disappearance of qi. Yi Qing Luo did it on purpose, intentionally luring them to take the bait. Dozens of black-robed men became timid once again. It was a bloody scene. Even if it was them, they might not be able to do it expressionlessly. Yi Qing Luo panted lightly as she quietly kept the silver threads back into the glower flame fan. She glanced at Yi Fengyu from the corner of her eyes. Seeing Yi Fengyu's current state, as well as Yi Fengru lying in a pool of blood, she relaxed. From the looks of it, Yi Fengyu had completely transformed. As long as Yi Fengyu could pass this trial today, it would be of great help to his future growth. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her gaze and no longer worried about her brother. She's deliberately mystifying us. Look at her hand. Suddenly, one of the black-clothed men roared. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice. Yi Qing Luo's hand, which was holding the glower flame fan, was stained with traces of blood. It was a thin trail of blood. The silver threads were clearly exposed to their eyes. It was silver wire. Yi Qing Luo made use of the silver threads to kill those black-robed men without anyone knowing. This knowledge gave the black-clothed people confidence. They looked at each other. Suddenly, a few black shadows scuttled towards Yi Qing Luo. Following that, the other black-clothed men also dashed over quickly. They stared vigilantly at that strange fan in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Stop! Suddenly, a soft but flat and emotionless voice resounded throughout the entire garden. This voice made the black-clothed men stop in their tracks. In the air, there was a ding-dang-dang sound when they fixed their eyes on it. Chapter 2098. The young lady's figure was petite. Her head only reached Yi Qing Luo's shoulder. Dressed in a pink long dress, a string of black bell bracelet on her wrist. Lolita's face, Lolita's appearance. But her pair of eyes were extremely sluggish, empty, and lifeless. Shadow, they're very dangerous. Stand behind me. Yi Qing Luo immediately pressed on Mo Ying's shoulder. Only you came? Where are they? They are still behind. Mo Ying replied calmly. I sensed their presence, so I came over first. Yi Qing Luo's hand, which was pressing on Mo Ying's shoulder, stiffened. The corners of Mo Ying's lips suddenly twitched, although the smile was stiff. But Yi Qing Luo could tell. Mo Ying was smiling. This was the second time Yi Qing Luo saw a different expression on Mo Ying's face since the first time she met her. Although the smile was very stiff and awkward, but at least it was a smile. Not waiting for Yi Qing Luo to regain her senses from this smile, Mo Ying had already turned her head and looked at those black-robed men who were frozen on the spot. Her face had already resumed its expressionless and stiff look. How dare you? Nirvana Realm is a place where you can come. Mo Ying looked at the black-robed men blankly. The black-robed men trembled. The next moment, all of them knelt on the ground. Island Sage. The black-robed men's forehead was pressed against the ground as they trembled. Island Sage? This group of black-robed men called Mo Ying as Island Sage. This is what was going on. After Mo Ying appeared, Yi Qing Luo had some guesses in her heart. But when she saw this group of black-robed men really kneeling on the ground, being extremely respectful, Yi Qing Luo was still stunned. Mo Ying was actually a big boss, and a super big boss. Island Sage, just by hearing this name, she knew that he was absolutely a big shot. Why were there two of them beside her? They were all heaven-defying existences. Look, Wanlong Yunzhan, that was a human dragon. Look at Xiao Jin. He was the Heaven Realm's Tian family successor. Beside her, which great god was there? Why did she feel that although she had always been the boss, but her actual status was the lowest? If Yi Qing Luo's words were to be known by everyone, everyone would definitely roll their eyes and say, "You're the future empress. Your status is miles ahead of us." And Mo Ying tilted her head and looked at them blankly. You still know that I am your Island Sage? Island Sage, this is the Island Master's order. We also... The men in black wanted to cry, but had no tears. If they had known that the person they were going to capture today was a friend of the island sage, they would not have come even if they were killed by the island master. The island sage was 1,000 times more terrifying than the island master. Moyuing shook the bell in her hand. The crisp tinkling sounds were extremely pleasing to the ear. But in the ears of the black-clothed men, it sounded like a fatal sound. They covered their ears in horror and began to tremble. All of them kowtowed with all their might, desperately begging for mercy. However, Mo Ying's expression did not change at all. She just tilted her head and didn't move, if not for those lifeless eyelashes that occasionally fluttered a few times. Yiqing Luo really felt that the Mo Ying standing in front of her was an exquisitely crafted wooden puppet. Shadow, leave them alive. Yiqing Luo realized Mo Ying's way of doing things, although she wasn't sure what effect the tinkling of the bell had on those black-clothed men. But Yiqing Luo was very clear. The bell continued ringing. Chapter 2099. Mo Ying turned her head sideways and took a look at Yiqing Luo. After a while, he slowly spat out a word. Oh. As soon as he finished speaking, the ringing stopped. The black-clothed men, who were howling in pain, kowtowing and rolling on the ground, collapsed into a pool of blood. The bell stopped ringing. The men in black immediately kowtowed. Lord Island Sage, please spare us. Lord Island Sage, please spare us. Mo Ying ignored them. Instead, he moved his body away. Yiqing Luo walked out from behind her. Slowly, he walked to the front of the men in black. You are from the Godless Island. Yiqing Luo's voice was very calm. This wasn't a question, but a statement. From the moment they shouted, Island Master. Yiqing Luo had already guessed their identities. Godless Island, what kind of power was this? Why did they have to team up with people related to her time and again to deal with her? The men in black kneeled on the ground and shivered. No one dared to speak. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. When Mo Ying saw this, her tender little hands hugged Yiqing Luo's arm as she snorted coldly. This cold humph made Yiqing Luo unable to restrain her laughter. His face was calm and his eyes were empty. However, she did her best to pout her lips and put on an angry expression as she snorted coldly. She looked extremely adorable. Yiqing Luo couldn't help but pinch her cheek. Mo Ying raised her head in confusion. Her round, big, and extremely beautiful eyes blinked. However, there was not the slightest bit of spirit in his eyes. Yiqing Luo sighed softly. She was clearly such a cute girl. On Mo Ying's body, just how many more secrets were hidden? Island Sage. When the black-robed men heard Mo Ying's cold snort, they trembled in fear. As soon as they spoke, Yiqing Luo's attention returned back to the black-robed men. He caught a glimpse of Yiqing Luo's expression. The man in black who was kneeling at the front responded quickly, Yes, we are from Godless Island. This attitude made Yiqing Luo puzzled. On Godless Island, after all, it was the island master who had a higher status. Or was it Mo Ying, the island sage, who had a higher status? Your island lord, what's the reason for you to come over? Yiqing Luo cast aside all the other thoughts. The most important thing now was to understand Godless Island's intention. The black-clothed man was startled. Soon after, they looked at each other with troubled expressions. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Since he refused to say, Why not listen to me? The men in black lowered their heads, not daring to speak. I've come into contact with the people from the Godless Island a few times. You have cooperated with the underworld forces, and your target should be me. Now, he's using Yi Fengru to brazenly appear in front of the representatives of the Western continent's major powers. Clearly, he has no intention of hiding his identity. Yiqing Luo paused for a moment as her eyes flashed past a thought provoking deep meaning. Although Godless Island is the #1 evil force in the Nirvana realm, it is the #1 island in the Nirvana realm. However, Godless Island should also belong to a force outside the Nirvana realm. Establishing the island in the Nirvana realm was already a very bold move, and it was very likely that the slightest mistake would cause it to be destroyed by the Heaven Tao. Now, Is Godless Island planning to participate in the Dark Forces plan so that the Heavenly Law historian will notice the existence of Godless Island? The black-robed men shook their heads hard. Their bodies kept on trembling as they took a careful look at Mo Yuing by the side, before answering in a trembling voice, We don't know anything. We're only following orders. Chapter 2100. Per Island Lord's orders to cooperate with Yi Feng Ru to sabotage you. Inheriting Three Springs sect. The black-robed man replied with a trembling voice. Sabotage her inheriting Three Springs sect? What did her inheriting Three Springs sect have to do with Godless Island? Why did that old man want to sabotage Qing Lu as Three Springs sect's patriarch? Mo Yuing popped her little head out from behind Yi Qing Luo and asked the question on her behalf. We don't know. The black-robed men shrunk their necks. Mo Yuing sneered unhappily again. You don't know? We really don't know. Island Sage, you know Island Lord's character very well. How would he possibly tell us the reason? Moreover, Island Lord's thoughts? We don't dare to guess. The black-robed men were so scared that they almost peed their pants. In their hearts, they all begged the Island Sage, who had an unpredictable temperament, not to vent his anger on them. Mo Yuing raised her wrist, her fingertips caressing the two furry little balls hanging on her shoulders. Her stiff and emotionless voice sounded faintly. Since that's the case, there's no point in keeping you two. Island Sage, spare us. Island Sage, spare us. Ding ding dang dang. The black-robed men's pleading voices were suppressed by the crisp ringing of the bell. Just a moment later, those black-robed men who were begging for mercy hugged their heads and banged their heads on the ground continuously. Yi Qing Luo pursed her pink lips, looking at the expressionless young lady who was shaking the bell in her hand. Her pink lips moved, but in the end, she didn't say anything. She knew. Mo Yuing was worried about something. Since Mo Yuing didn't want her to know about those matters on Godless Island, she didn't ask. In just half an instant's time, these black-robed men all banged themselves to death on the ground. A thick blood stench filled the air. In the garden, other than the sounds created by Yi Feng Yu and Yi Feng Ru, there were no other sounds. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and looked towards Yi Feng Yu's direction. This look made Yi Qing Luo slightly surprised, because Yi Feng Ru was lying on the ground, so abused that he couldn't be recognized. Yi Feng Ru's robe had already turned into strips under Yi Feng Yu's sword power. Not a single part of his body was intact. It was covered with scattered sword wounds. It was a ghastly sight. Blood covered Yi Feng Ru's entire body. Yi Feng Ru looked as if he had been soaked in blood. It was clear that Yi Feng Yu was ruthless. He looked at the expressionless youth riding on the Xian's back, who only had eyes for Yi Feng Ru, although this was a growth for Yi Feng Yu. However, Yi Qing Luo had never thought of cultivating him into a devil. Yi Feng Yu's current state. It was no different from turning into a demon. Yi Qing Luo took out 2 bottles from the profound phoenix ring and passed it to Mo Yuing. He pointed at the representatives of the major forces around him, who were either unconscious or had their eyes wide open. Mo Yuing understood and took the bottle of medicine to cure those people. Yi Qing Luo took a step forward and walked towards Yi Feng Yu's direction. Xiao Yu. Her voice was a little cold, and her steps were extremely slow. Yi Qing Luo could see it clearly. The young man's slender body stiffened when he heard her call. If you can still hear my voice, then turn around and look at me, Yi Qing Luo said calmly. The young man's stiff body seemed to be hesitating. Chapter 2101. The youth's young and tender face was no longer as stern and sinister as before. A pair of black eyes blinked in panic and helplessness. He looked like a child who had yet to grow up. He had done something wrong and was standing there uneasily, waiting for his punishment. Through him, Yi Qing Luo looked at the ground, at Yi Feng Ru who had long lost his human form. Yi Feng Yu noticed her gaze. Subconsciously, he moved in front of Yi Feng Ru, trying to block Yi Qing Luo's line of sight. Yi Qing Luo looked at him indifferently. You don't want sister to see him? Yi Feng Yu was silent for a long time, then nodded. Why? Yi Qing Luo remained calm. Yi Feng Yu lowered his eyes. His fingers, which were gripping the long sword, were so tightly clenched that his fingertips had turned white. She waited for a long time, but Yi Fengyu did not reply. Yi Qing Luo muttered to herself, "You don't want me to see you make Yi Fengru into this state. Are you afraid that I will be afraid of you?" Yi Fengyu's pupils constricted, and he didn't reply. Instead, he lowered his head even more. Yi Qing Luo slowly walked towards him. Yi Fengyu wanted to retreat. However, after Shi Ju saw its master, its feet stopped moving. If not for the fact that Yi Fengyu was still on its back. It was afraid that it would transform into a little black cat and pounce into its master's arms. Yi Qing Luo stood in front of Shi Ju. She looked up at Yi Fengyu. Yi Fengyu lowered his head and coincidentally met Yi Qing Luo's line of sight. There was an indescribable sense of panic in his heart. The sword in his hand fell to the ground in shock. Clang! The sound of the long sword falling to the ground was extremely crisp. The blood on the ground stained the sword. Yi Fengyu was at a loss of what to do. He cautiously glanced at Yi Qing Luo's expression and wanted to get down from the seal's back to pick up the long sword. However, Shi Ju didn't give him a chance to get down. When those who were awake saw this, they couldn't help but admire Yi Qing Luo even more. The scene of Yi Fengyu brutally beating up Yi Fengru was clearly witnessed by all of them. His aura was strong and majestic. It had the aura of a sect. But when facing Yi Qing Luo, he was like an obedient little brother. The flames on his body were completely restrained. It was as if he had done something wrong and was caught by his elders. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell that the atmosphere between the two of them was a very normal sibling relationship. On the other side, Yi Qing Luo had already walked over and bent over to pick up the long sword, which was stained with blood. She took out a handkerchief and wiped the blood off the sword bit by bit. Without raising his head, he said, "Little you, my hands are stained with a lot of blood. Many lives have been lost. I have also used many cruel methods to torture my enemies." She paused, and the hand that was wiping the sword also stopped. "Are you afraid of me like this?" "I'm not afraid," Yi Fengyu replied without hesitation. As soon as the words came out, Yi Fengyu was stunned. He stared at Yi Qing Luo in a daze with his eyes wide open. Suddenly, he understood the reason why Yi Qing Luo asked this question. His nervous and uneasy heart calmed down at this moment. Hearing Yi Fengyu's unhesitating reply, Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a faint smile. "The amount of blood and lives I'm stained with is not something you can imagine. But you're not afraid of me like this, then? You've merely taught a lesson to the scum who insulted me. Why would I be afraid of you and blame you?" Hearing his sister's words, Yi Fengyu's eyes lit up. Chapter 2102. Yi Qing Luo took out the sword that she had wiped clean and handed it over to him. The smile on her lips was extremely gentle. Yi Fengyu took the sword with trembling hands. "Sister," he pursed his thin lips and held the sword tightly. "I will definitely become the patriarch of Three Springs sect and become your most solid backing." Whether Yi Qing Luo was his biological sister or not. In his heart, Yi Qing Luo was his sister. All the hard work he had done, all in order to better protect his sister. Just like how his sister protected him every time. Yi Qing Luo saw the determination in his eyes. She smiled and nodded gently. "I believe in little you. In future, sister will have to rely on little you." After the crisis was resolved, the atmosphere in the garden became more relaxed because of this. Those representatives who woke up after taking the antidote felt like they had a new lease of life. They were extremely puzzled. Why were all the forces from other planes running to the West continent recently? What was going on? And it seemed like most of them were targeting Yi Qing Luo. Everyone suddenly recalled the news that old Grandmadam and Yi Fengru had revealed not long ago. Yi Qing Luo was not from the Yi family. Then, Yi Qing Luo's mysterious father. Could he be some big shot? Otherwise, how could Yi Qing Luo have such a strong innate talent and attracted the attention of so many forces from other planes? Just as everyone was imagining a melodramatic drama that couldn't get any more melodramatic. Suddenly, someone noticed something and shouted angrily, "Eighth young Master Yi, be careful." Everyone was shocked by this shout. Yiqing Luo heard this and quickly reached out to grab Yi Fengyu's arm. She exerted force and pulled Yi Fengyu from Shi Ju's back to her back. Shi Ju quickly bent its limbs and laid flat on the ground. At the same time, a piercingly cold, profound ray pierced over. Yiqing Luo's reaction was too fast. That profound ray pierced through thin air. But the profound ray did not stop because of this. Instead, it pierced towards Yiqing Luo's direction with irresistible force. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly as her fingers clenched tightly and threw a punch forward. Bam! A loud sound followed Yiqing Luo's punch. A body covered in blood rolled out. It was Yi Fengru. When Yi Fengyu saw Yi Fengru lying in a pool of blood, his eyes flashed with disbelief. He had personally turned Yi Fengru into something unrecognizable. Naturally, he knew that it was impossible for Yi Fengru to still be able to fight. But Yi Fengru actually still had the strength to take advantage of the opportunity to assassinate them. Everyone looked at Yi Fengru, who had fallen to the ground and was unable to get up. Seeing that Yiqing Luo and her brother were safe and sound, they heaved a sigh of relief. Everyone's gazes once again fell on Yi Fengru. They were also astonished. Yi Fengru was injured to this extent, yet he still had the strength to fight. Yiqing Luo, you slut, I'm going to kill you. Kill you. Yi Fengru fell to the ground, but he didn't settle down. He twisted his head ferociously and roared through gritted teeth. In his eyes, wisps of black gas flashed faintly. The denser it was, the more he struggled. After scolding Yiqing Luo with that furious bellow, he coughed out a mouthful of blood. His mouth opened and closed again, but there was no sound. But from the shape of Yi Fengru's mouth, Yi Fengru shouted the two words Qianqian. Zi Qianqian again. Yiqing Luo's slender brows knitted tightly as something flashed past her mind. She seemed to be about to grab that thing. Chapter 2103. That figure's speed was simply too fast, and it was filled with a killing intent. Yiqing Luo had yet to stop it. Carrying a strong practitioner's powerful palm wind, it mercilessly struck towards Yi Fengru, who was lying on the ground, unable to move. No! A shrill scream was heard. On the stage, a slender figure dashed towards Yi Fengru's direction. Bam! The palm wind landed heavily on the figure that had suddenly appeared. That person's body flew out weakly and fell beside Yi Fengru, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Bei Ming family. Yiqing Luo's throat moved, just as that person dashed out to block in front of Yi Fengru. Yiqing Luo recognized that it was the Bei Ming family. Yi Fengru's birth mother, the Bei Ming family. She was a beautiful and intelligent woman. Yi Fengyu was also shocked by the sudden turn of events. The young man's slender body leaned slightly behind Yiqing Luo. A pair of anxious and uneasy eyes looked towards Yi Fengru's direction in a daze. Everyone was shocked that the Bei Ming family who suddenly rushed out to save Yi Fengru. Yiqing Luo had already set her sights on that person who attacked Yi Fengru. If she didn't hear wrongly, she seemed to have heard that person call out, "Island Sage," just now, which meant the person who attacked Yi Fengru was from Godless Island. Not far from Yi Fengru stood a hunched, extremely skinny old man. The old man's eyes stared at Yi Fengru, his hands clenched into fists. His face was filled with a vexed expression. Vexed? Yiqing Luo squinted her eyes in interest. This old man was vexed, not being able to kill Yi Fengru. Wu Sha, Mo Ying's stiff voice rang from behind Yiqing Luo. She expressionlessly walked to Yiqing Luo's side, her empty eyes locked onto that old man. Wu Sha. Yiqing Luo had seen him before. She had seen this Wu Sha beside Godless Island's young master, Island Lord Yiqian. That time when they entered Godless Island's array. It was this Wu Sha's doing. Wu Sha greets Lord Island Sage. Wu Sha bowed respectfully and was extremely respectful. And Mo Ying replied, "That old man really put in a lot of effort. In order to kidnap Qing Luo, he even sent you out." Wu Sha bowed even lower. "Island Sage, please don't misunderstand. This subordinate is only here to monitor the situation of the islanders and will not interfere with this order. You think that after leaving Godless Island for so many years, this holy lord has become so stupid that you can fool me? Mo Yuing sneered. These words came out of her mouth in a flat tone, although her tone was rigid. However, the kind of aura and the coldness in his words gave off a bone-chilling feeling. Wu Shan knelt on the ground. This subordinate does not dare. Mo Ying's empty eyes swept past Wu Sha. She did not speak and did not ask Wu Sha to get up. She allowed Wu Sha to kneel on the ground. Wu Sha was furious, but he did not dare to offend the island sage. Yiqing Luo looked at Wu Sha, who was kneeling on the ground, and didn't say anything. Wu Sha's appearance made Yiqing Luo have some calculations in her heart. Wu Sha's motive was obviously to kill Yi Fengru. That meant to say that Yi Fengru had some secret on him, which the Godless Island wanted to destroy. Otherwise, Wu Sha would not specially appear and take action against Yi Fengru under everyone's watchful eyes. Even if Wu Sha's reason was to use Island Sage, which was Mo Ying's name. But Yiqing Luo understood. Wu Sha merely wanted to take Yi Fengru's life. She was curious. Chapter 2104. Mother. Yi Fengru's face was sprayed with blood by Bai Mingshi. The warm blood soaked his face. It also caused Yi Fengru's heart to suddenly feel a sharp pain. Bai Mingshi spat out a mouthful of blood. Her eyes gradually lost focus. She struggled to adjust the focus, wanting to see her son clearly. But the feeling of powerlessness made her gradually want to close her eyes. Although Wu Sha's palm only used 50% of his strength. But Bai Mingshi was only a weak woman who didn't often cultivate. She couldn't withstand Wu Sha's palm. But Bai Mingshi didn't regret it. Her son was fine, as long as her son was fine. Mother, why did you block this palm for me? Why did you block it? Yi Fengru struggled to crawl to Bai Mingshi's side. He tightly grasped Bai Mingshi's hand, crying bitterly, Mother, don't close your eyes, I can save you. I'm a medicine master. I can save you. He frantically touched the ring in his hand. Several bottles of medicine were taken out. His hands were trembling as he desperately searched for healing pills. But every single bottle was filled with dark poison. Yi Fengru's heart was even more flustered, constantly rummaging for medicine bottles. His hands and body also began to tremble more and more. Ruer. Bai Mingshi called Yi Fengru in a low voice. Yi Fengru's body stiffened, ignoring the blood all over his body, holding Bai Mingshi tightly. Mother, I'm here. Bai Mingshi leaned against his chest. Between the breath, there was a thick smell of blood. She couldn't tell whether it was Yi Fengru's or her own. She heard Yi Fengru call her mother over and over again and felt the warmth of his palms. Bai Mingshi's heart was already filled with satisfaction. She wanted to laugh, but didn't have the strength to move her lips. In the end, she could only spit out a few weak breaths. Ruer, promise mother, don't take revenge. Live well for mother. You also have to live well. Bai Mingshi's breath was extremely weak, as if it would break at any moment. On Yi Fengru's face, there was no telling whether it was tears or blood. He hugged Lady Bai Ming tightly and said with a sobbing tone, I will live on. Mother, you have to live on too. Mother. He suddenly raised his head and looked at Yiqing Luo. That blood-soaked face looked like it had been soaked in a pool of blood. No matter how one looked at it, it was horrifying. Yiqing Luo. I know you can save my mother. I beg you. I beg you to save her. Yi Fengru seemed to have caught hold of a life-saving straw as he struggled to get up and wanted to kneel down towards Yiqing Luo. But his body was already riddled with wounds, and he was holding Lady Bai Ming, so he couldn't kneel at all. Yiqing Luo looked at him. Then, he looked at the Bai Ming clan in his arms. The expression on his face was calm. However, his heart was unable to calm down. No matter how wicked Yi Fengru was, he treated the Bai Ming clan with sincerity. Bai Ming clan. This lady's intelligence and accurate choice of side made Yiqing Luo not feel any antipathy towards her. However, she was no saint. The relationship between the mother and son was indeed touching. But Yiqing Luo would never forget that Yifeng Ru had tried to kill her several times. I know I'm wrong, but my mother treats you sincerely. Yifeng Ru wailed, I could beg you to save my mother. I can use my life to exchange. Rua. Lady Biming suddenly increased her strength as she clasped Yifeng Ru's wrist. Chapter 2105. Yiqing Luo fixed her gaze on the Biming clan. After a while, she moved her feet and walked towards her. Yifeng Ru trembled as he raised his head to look at Yiqing Luo. The scarlet in his eyes and the lingering black aura gradually faded. Even though his face was covered in dirt and blood, Yiqing Luo could clearly see the pleading and helplessness on his face. Yiqing Luo, I beg you to save her. As long as you save her, I will do anything to repay you. Yifeng Ru pleaded with a sobbing tone. If you want my life, you can take it. As long as you are willing to save my mother, save my mother. Yiqing Luo half squatted down. You are my prey. It's easy for me to take your life. Yifeng Ru was stunned as tears flowed out of his eyes. Yiqing Luo, I know I've lost my mind. I shouldn't have done so many things to hurt you. But my mother doesn't know anything. She is wholeheartedly for you. For Three Springs Sect. Yifeng Ru. Yiqing Luo's cold voice interrupted Yifeng Ru's crying. Her eyes were calm as she stared at Yifeng Ru calmly. Didn't you say that Zi Qianqian is your everything, and losing Zi Qianqian is equivalent to losing everything? She paused as her lips curled into a chilly arc. The arc was very shallow, but it also revealed some profound meaning. Yifeng Ru's body stiffened as the expression on his face froze. Yifeng Ru, have you ever thought about your mother and everything you did previously? Yiqing Luo smiled faintly as her gaze was like a torch. When you killed your father and forced the abdication, have you ever thought about your mother, that she is the concubine of Three Springs Sect? Have you ever thought about what the outside world would say about her? When you joined forces with Yi, Qing, Qian, and the Dark Forces, have you ever thought about your mother? Have you ever thought about what would happen to you and your mother if the rebellion failed? If you succeed, you will bear the name of a traitor, and your mother will be condemned by the world. How will she live peacefully? If you fail, you will die, and not only will your mother die with you, she will also bear the blame. You disregarded everything and even your life to seek revenge on me for Zi Qianqian. Have you ever thought about your mother's position in Three Spring Sect after losing you? Yiqing Luo had yet to finish her words. Yifeng Ru choked with sobs as he shook his head frantically. Don't say any more. Don't say any more. Tears filled his face, mixed with the fresh blood. His entire face looked extremely comical. He hugged Lady Biming tightly and cried until his voice was hoarse. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I was possessed. I shouldn't have done this in this world. His only relative was his mother. It was the Biming clan that had given him the peace he had grown up in the Three Springs Sect, which was filled with internal strife and intrigue. It was the Biming clan. In order for him to grow up in peace and not be bullied by the other concubines, he had to be submissive in front of the other concubines, tolerating everything. It was Biming clan. Whenever he was injured while practicing cultivation and no one cared for him, she would sneak into his courtyard to apply medicine and cheer him on. It was the Biming clan. His mother was the kindest and most gentle mother in the world. For his mother, he worked hard to make himself more and more outstanding, using the mask of elegance and friendliness to deceive the concubines of other branches. He secretly developed his own forces. He was admitted into the Heavenly Academy with excellent results and entered the Heavenly Profound class through his cleverness and mask, making the concubines of other branches accept him. Such an outstanding existence. No one was aware of his ambition. All of this, it was all for his mother. But when was it? Chapter 2106. Yiqing Luo remained calm. As for Yifeng Ru, who was crying like a man in tears, she was not moved in the slightest. She lowered her eyes and looked at Biming, who was gripping Yifeng Ru's sleeves tightly, struggling to keep her eyes open, her lips trembling. She pursed her lips and held Biming's other hand. Bai Ming's body temperature was already a bit cold. Yiqing Luo revolved her profound energy and injected some profound qi into Bai Mingshir's body to protect his shattered heart meridians. Bai Mingshir held Yiqing Luo's hand tightly, as her mouth moved agitatedly, wanting to say something. Don't talk anymore. If you drag on any longer, even Master Ghost Doctor won't be able to save you. Yiqing Luo pushed her hand away so as not to disturb her transmission of profound qi. But she didn't use any strength. Bai Ming's grip on her hand tightened. Perhaps it was Yiqing Luo's profound qi which helped the Bai Ming family to recover some of their energy. She panted heavily as she raised her head and looked at Yiqing Luo with pleading eyes as she spoke in an extremely soft voice. "Seventh Miss, listen to me. I... Her face grew paler and paler. Wu Sha's palm had indeed caused her internal organs to shatter. He did not close his eyes. It was her feelings for her son that had kept her going until now. Bai Ming's body was throbbing with pain. She endured the pain and continued with difficulty. "I know my body the best. I want to beg, seventh young lady." Yiqing Luo's action of transferring profound qi paused. Madame Bai Ming's breathing seemed to have stopped, as the hand which was holding Yiqing Luo's hand gradually twisted into a crooked shape. Yiqing Luo was shocked and hurriedly revolved her profound qi to maintain the vitality of the Bai Ming clan. "Seventh young lady, for the sake of my dedication to the Three Springs sect, spare Ru's life. I'm willing to exchange something with you." Madame Bai Ming took a deep breath and tried her best to look at Yiqing Luo. "Seventh Miss, what happened that year? I actually know a little. If Seventh Miss wants to know about your biological father, in the secret compartment in my room, there is something that Seventh Miss wants." She stuttered. Yiqing Luo had to listen carefully to understand what she was saying. When the word biological father was mentioned, the expression on his face changed. Yiqing Luo's heart suddenly trembled. The Bai Ming clan knew what had happened back then. "I'll use this to exchange for Ru'er's life." The depths of Lady Bai Ming's eyes had already gradually turned cloudy. "Ru'er's sins will be repaid with my lowly life." Mother! Yifengru realized something. He hugged Lady Bai Ming and screamed, "Mother, don't leave me behind. If you leave, what's the point of living? Mother Ru'er." Dark North strove to raise his hand, wanting to touch Yifengru's face. Her eyes gradually became misty and unfocused. His lips opened and closed slightly, and he breathed out soundlessly, "Promise me to live for the seventh miss for her." The last breath was getting lighter and lighter. Then, Bai Ming's hand landed heavily on the ground. In the end, he closed his eyes. "Mother." Yifengru wept like a child next to Bai Mingshir's corpse. Yiqing Luo looked at her palm, at that powerless palm that slid down. His expressionless face changed a little. The Bai Ming clan was dead. Before she died, she used her own life to scheme against her. But she didn't have any temper at all. Bai Mingshir really doted on this son. In the end, she used her own life to exchange for Yi Fengru's life. Chapter 2107. "Mother!" Yi Fengru cried hoarsely. Her cries also caused everyone present to be moved. Even earlier, this young man had a fierce look, shouting to kill them, and even poison them. But seeing this scene, the crowd was still unable to condemn him at this moment. Yiqing Luo's vision was fixed on Yi Fengru. She noticed it. At the moment when Bai Ming clan breathed her last, something seemed to be pulled out from Yi Fengru's body. Recalling earlier Wu Sha's action of trying to kill Yi Fengru, Yiqing Luo's eyes were filled with deep meaning as she squinted her eyes. Following that, she slowly stood up, looking down at Yi Fengru, who was kneeling on the ground, crying out in pain. Her calm voice had no ripples. "Yi Fengru, Bai Ming clan used her life to exchange for your life then. Next, whether you want to leave or stay, it's all up to you." The man who was carrying Bai Ming clan's corpse stiffened slightly. After a long time, Yi Fengru raised his blood-covered face. That pair of eyes, filled with grief, pain, stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. He wanted to rage. He wanted to blame Yi Qing Luo. Baiming clan's death was caused by Yi Qing Luo. But the words were at the tip of his tongue. But he couldn't spit out a single word. In his heart, he was very clear. It was him who caused the death of his mother. His mother died because of him. He wanted an outlet to vent the suppressed anger in his heart. But Yi Fengru was even clearer. This outlet absolutely could not be Yi Qing Luo. I don't need you to give me an answer so quickly. How could Yi Qing Luo not see the hatred in Yi Fengru's eyes? Now, she had no intention to kill Yi Fengru. Of course, if Yi Fengru still insisted on courting death, then she would not care about Baiming clan. But she would directly kill Yi Fengru to get rid of any future troubles. After all, in summary, Yi Fengru was indeed a trouble these few days. Before this, she had to go take a look first. Baiming clan's secret in exchange for Yi Fengru's life. Was it worth it? She had to tolerate Yi Fengru. Bring the Baiming clan back first. As for the burial, that's up to you. Yi Qing Luo indifferently glanced at Yi Fengru. A medicine bottle rolled to the side of Yi Fengru's feet. After the ceremony ends, then give me your answer. Yi Fengru's body was taut, and he lowered his head. His 5 fingers gripped tightly onto Baiming's robes. He tried his best to suppress the anger in his chest. Slowly, he picked up the bottle and held it in his palm. He tightened his arms, stiffly opened the bottle, and swallowed a pill without hesitation. Then, ignoring the wounds on his body, he hugged Baiming Shi and wobbled towards the Three Springs sect's backyard. No one stopped him. No one took a step forward. Yi Fengru's figure disappeared into the flattened garden. Everyone came back to their senses. 7th young mistress of the night. How could you let him leave just like that? He wants to kill you. It's kind of ingrate. Even if you soften your heart and let him go, he won't be grateful. Did you see the look in his eyes just now? It was as if he wanted to skin Yi 7th young mistress alive. If it wasn't for his mother, he would be long dead. Everyone was extremely dissatisfied with Yi Fengru. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Today is the day little Yu inherits the patriarch's position. It's not good to see blood. Chapter 21:08. Was it really okay to lie so blatantly? However, Yi Qing Luo didn't care about what those people were thinking. She pulled Yi Fengyu in front of her and said, "Let's continue with the succession ceremony. Hurry up." As she spoke, she glanced sideways and looked at Mo Yuing beside her. "Shadow, I'll leave Wu Sha to you. Don't let him leave." Mo Yuing tilted her head and immediately nodded. "I understand." He knew that Godless Island respected Mo Yuying's identity very much. Yi Qing Luo wasn't afraid that Wu Sha would escape from Mo Yuying's hands. Thus, she focused all her attention on Yi Fengyu's succession ceremony. Just now, a series of unexpected events had occurred. It didn't just shock the various forces present. It also caused the old ancestor to be astonished. Hearing Yi Qing Luo's words, the walking stick in old madam's hand started to tremble uncontrollably. Without the Baiming clan by his side to take care of him. After a series of huge changes, the elder ancestor couldn't even stand up at this time. No, Old 8, you can't be the leader of the Three Springs sect." The old ancestor's voice trembled as he tried his best to stop him. The old ancestor had seen Yi Fengyu's performance just now. She admired Yi Fengyu's methods against Yi Fengru. He was also very proud that Yi Fengyu had such a powerful aura at such a young age. But thinking of what Yi Qing Luo had said earlier, it had easily changed Yi Fengyu's emotions. Moreover, Yi Fengyu obviously followed Yi Qing Luo's lead. If Yi Fengyu inherited the Three Springs sect, in the end, hadn't he still fallen into Yi Qing Luo's hands? She wanted to make use of the relationship between Yi Qing Luo and Yi Fengyu, and use Yi Qing Luo's current influence to stabilize Three Springs sect. But it didn't mean that she was willing to let Yi Qing Luo make use of him to control the Three Springs sect. Before Yi Fengyu had any feelings for Yi Qing Luo, Yi Fengyu absolutely could not inherit the Three Springs sect. The old ancestor's sudden resistance caused everyone present to be stunned. Before this, Didn't the old ancestor always approve of Yi Feng, you becoming the sect leader of the Three Springs sect? Why did he suddenly change his mind? That's right. He could not become the leader of the Three Springs sect. The Three Springs sect isn't something that can be inherited just because you say so. The sect elder's voice rang out, and the sect elder appeared out of nowhere. The sect elder stood beside the old ancestor. From the first time he saw Yi Qing Luo, he felt that this young lady's threat to him was simply too huge. Now, it seemed that it was indeed so. No matter what, he had to unite with the old forefather and chase Yi Qing Luo, this pervert, out of Three Springs sect. Furthermore, those who were related to Yi Qing Luo, those who had deep feelings for her, should all be chased out of Three Springs sect. TSK, you're indeed a cowardly and useless elder. Now that the matter has been settled, you're already running out to create trouble. Yi Qing Luo ridiculed without any restraint. The sect elder's face darkened. What did you say? This elder is just... He stammered as he tried to retort. After a long while, he finally said, that kid didn't poison me, I was poisoned. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly. The disdain in her eyes was obvious. The corner of her mouth curved up, and her eyes narrowed. She glanced sideways at the sect elder. If I'm not mistaken, it seems that in the instant that Yi Fengru poisoned him, the sect elder fled faster than a rabbit. She paused and turned her head to look at Yi Fengyu, smiling as she asked, Xiaoyu, am I right? Chapter 2109. If you two siblings want to join forces and humiliate me so that you can ascend to the position of the Three Springs sect's lord, right? Let me tell you, as long as I am alive, I will take on the responsibility of Three Springs sect's sect elder. The sect elder's face was livid with anger, but he could only clamor and refuse to relent. After saying that, he pushed the elder ancestor beside him. You are the only elder in this generation of Three Springs sect. Tell me, am I right? The old ancestor's eyes had always been fixed on Yi Fengyu. Hearing the sect elder's words, her old eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of mist. His entire person seemed to have aged several decades. How could the elder ancestor not know that Yi Fengyu was the only one in the Three Springs sect who could shoulder this responsibility? Yi Fengyu was also the most suitable candidate. But, unfortunately, she was worried about that meticulous and unpredictable Yi Qing Luo. She did not want to see Three Springs sect fall into the hands of an outsider. The old ancestor stared blankly at Yi Fengyu for a long time. She slowly closed her eyes and sighed softly. Eighth brother's personality is not suitable to inherit the position of sect master. Hearing this, the sect leader felt a sense of satisfaction that he had finally received the support of the Yi clan. That's right. Yi Fengyu does not have the qualifications to inherit Three Springs sect. A sinister glint flashed in the sect elder's eyes. Now that the Three Springs sect is in a precarious situation, we need someone who can stabilize the Three Springs sect and ensure its future development to shoulder this heavy responsibility. He paused and said meaningfully, Old ancestor, in my opinion, what do you think? How could a smart person not understand the meaning behind the sect elder's words? Three Springs sect's young masters and young mistresses were either dead or injured. Only the two young masters, Yi Fengru and Yi Fengyu, were still alive. Yi Fengru would never have the chance to become the Three Springs sect leader. Even Yi Fengru didn't have the qualifications. The person who could protect and stabilize the Three Springs sect, apart from the sect elders, there were no other candidates. The old ancestor did not expect that the sect elder would actually have such ambition. No sect elder had ever interfered with Three Springs sect's internal affairs. He was the first elder who wanted to take charge of the Three Springs sect. The old ancestor did not know how to respond, although this sect elder was from the Three Springs sect. However, in the heart of the old ancestor, he was still an outsider. Let the sect elders manage the Three Springs sect. It was no different from letting Yi Qing Luo borrow Yi Fengyu's hand to manage Three Springs sect. What I mean is, I will temporarily take over the position of the sect leader and train the young sect leader with you. old ancestor. Until the old ancestor feels that the young sect leader is capable of shouldering the responsibility of the Three Springs sect, I will step down. Seeing that the old ancestor was moved, the sect elders increased their efforts to persuade him. As expected, the old ancestor was persuaded. So the sect elders have been nitpicking at me the moment they saw me. They're not willing to let me or little you become the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. They're all waiting for this moment. A sweet and disdainful voice of a young lady came from aside. Yiqing Luo crossed her arms and looked at the sect elder with disdain. This can't be, that one is not qualified. The sect elder is really awe-inspiring. Then, I have something to ask. If little you is not qualified to be the Three Springs sect leader, then what qualifications do you have as the sect elder? Yiqing Luo's last sentence was abruptly raised. Chapter 21:10. The entire garden fell into silence. In that instant, the atmosphere in the area froze. No one dared to make a sound as they stared nervously at the situation in front of them. Everyone could tell that Yiqing Luo was angry. If it were them, they would be angry too. The sect elder had obviously made up his mind long ago. He wanted to take this opportunity to seize control of Three Springs sect. An outer sect elder. He wanted to seize control of internal affairs. This kind of thing, no matter which family, was absolutely not allowed to happen. However, old Grandmadam was moved. They really couldn't understand what old Grandmadam was thinking. She would rather believe in an outer sect elder, and not willing to believe in her own grandson. There was such an elder in Three Springs sect. If Three Springs sect announced its demise now, they absolutely believed in it, even if it didn't fall now. Without Yiqing Luo's support, it was only a matter of time before it fell. You are an outsider. You have no right to intervene in Three Springs sect's affairs. The sect elder gritted his teeth and retorted. He put on a righteous look and snorted coldly. I'm just doing official business. Although you are the young patriarch chosen by the former patriarch, but you do not have the blood of the Yi family flowing in you. You are not from a Yi family. What right do you have to inherit the position of Three Springs sect's patriarch? The sect elder didn't panic and argued with reason. In Yi Fengyu, the Yi family's 8th young master, although he has the blood of the Yi family, but he is still young and his temperament is not suitable to take on such a big responsibility. My duty is to protect Three Springs sect and every generation's patriarch of Three Springs sect. It is reasonable for me to stay in Three Springs sect and nurture the 8th young master while managing Three Springs sect on behalf of him. Why did you say that I am a traitor who covets Three Springs sect? I am the sect elder of the Three Springs sect. My status is noble. Even the Yi clan's old sect leader of the 3rd generation would have to address me respectfully as Lord Elder. Why should I covet Three Springs sect's authority? The sect elder's words sounded extremely reasonable. Yiqing Luo snorted coldly. So what if your status is noble? You still don't have any real power. Her words hit the nail on the head. It directly pierced into the sect elder's vital point. The sect elder's face suddenly turned pale, and his 5 fingers clenched tightly into a fist. Especially in recent generations, I'm afraid the sect leader of the Three Springs sect has almost forgotten about the sect elders. How long had it been since he had enjoyed the honorable treatment from the previous sect master? You've wasted so much time. How could you possibly not be interested in the Three Springs sect's power? Yiqing Luo's pink lips curled upwards, revealing a few traces of ridicule and ridicule. The sect elder was rendered speechless. His face was dark and gloomy, and his facial features looked somewhat sinister. Sect elder, you really... Old Grandmadam realized the seriousness of the matter when she heard Yiqing Luo's words. Her heart sank. He had lived for most of his life, yet he was blinded at this critical moment. He really wanted an outer sect elder to take charge of the Three Springs sect? She was really getting old. His heart was getting more and more confused. Chapter 21:11. Looking at the sect elder who was still trying his best to quibble. Yiqing Luo's face was still calm. Her lips curled into a faint smile. That calm look, it formed a sharp contrast with the exasperated sect elder. Yiqing Luo tilted her head and smiled faintly. Sect elder, Don't you think that the excuse of jealousy is too far-fetched? All the guests here can see clearly that I, Yi Qing Luo, have never thought of inheriting Three Springs sect. From the beginning to the end, today's succession ceremony was single-handedly created by me for little you. You were obviously exposed on the spot that you are not a descendant of the Yi family. That's why 8th young master came to replace you. The sect elder roared. Yi Qing Luo snorted coldly. If I want to be the patriarch of Three Springs sect, why should I not wear the attire specially made for me? Why would little you wear the attire of Three Springs sect and appear here? After a pause, she asked, or does the sect elder think that I have the ability to predict the future? You. The sect elder was speechless as he stared at Yi Qing Luo with a steely expression. Yi Qing Luo placed one hand on his shoulder. Her slender body only reached Yi Fengyu's shoulders. However, her aura was extremely powerful. She squinted her eyes. That sinister smile on her lips was extremely treacherous. What? Could it be that the sect elder is really going to insist that I can predict the future? The minute Yi Qing Luo said that, everyone present couldn't help but burst out laughing. Yes, Yi Qing Luo's words were reasonable. She didn't wear the attire specially made by the old Grandmaster. Obviously, she had no intention to inherit the position of patriarch. From the beginning to the end, she had been planning for her brother. In comparison, it was obvious that the sect elder wanted to control the Three Springs sect. It was obvious that he was an ambitious elder of the sect. You two siblings deliberately colluded. Who doesn't know that 8th young master only listens to you? What's the difference between him and you being the patriarch? The sect elder stubbornly refused to let Yi Qing Luo go. He's only 15. He's not old enough to be crowned, and he's not qualified to inherit the position of the sect leader. The sect elders racked their brains and finally grasped the most important point in the rules of inheriting the position of the sect master. A complacent smile appeared on his face. If you were a descendant of the Yi clan, it would be logical for you to inherit the position of the clan leader when the clan leader died in an accident. But when the previous sect leader was alive, he had no intention of nurturing the 8th young master. If he inherits the position at this age, I'm afraid the future of the Three Springs sect. He stopped talking. However, everyone understood what he meant by the words he didn't finish. The old ancestor's expression also became solemn. The sect elder stroked his white flowery beard and looked at Yi Qing Luo complacently. According to the rules of succession, before Yi Fengyu reaches the age of 20, he has no right to inherit the position of sect master. He thought that after extinguishing all of Yi Qing Luo's hopes, Yi Qing Luo would definitely be flustered. But looking at Yi Qing Luo for some time, the corners of Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a strange sneer. The sect elder's heart trembled. Could it be that Yi Qing Luo still had some tricks up her sleeves? Yi Qing Luo placed her hands on Yi Fengyu's shoulders and pushed him towards the direction of the crowd. Chapter 21:12. Yi Qing Luo's gaze lightly swept over the sect elder. The hand on Yi Fengyu's shoulder slowly lifted up and gently tapped on his forehead. Yi Fengyu understood Yi Qing Luo's meaning. He immediately closed his eyes and let his heart gradually settle down until he felt the scalding sensation on his forehead. Yi Fengyu then opened his eyes. The moment he opened his eyes, he felt a chill down his spine. His entire aura was released in an instant. The young man was dressed in a solemn navy blue brocade robe. It should have looked extremely comical with that slightly immature face. But the young man's solemn expression, he forcibly raised his own aura to the peak, and also suppressed his own immaturity. The most shocking thing was, on the young man's forehead, there were a few extremely light but distinct patterns. The red flowing light outlined the faintly discernible patterns. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky dispersed. The projected sunlight shone on the young man's handsome and extraordinary face. That powerful aura was so majestic that the entire garden fell into a dead silence. No matter how powerful the representative was, regardless of seniority or age. At this moment, They were all suppressed by Yi Fengyu's powerful aura and dared not to breathe. Everyone sighed in their hearts. He was indeed the younger brother that Yi Qing Luo brought up. At such a young age, he had such an oppressive aura. If properly cultivated, in the future when he grew up, he would absolutely become an overlord. Sect elder, old grandmadam now. Is Luo qualified? Yi Qing Luo let go of Yi Fengyu's hand and put her hands behind her back, smiling brightly. As everyone knows, every patriarch of the four major sects is selected by the godly emperor that we protect. In every generation, there will be a Yi family descendant who will inherit the patriarch's legacy, which is the imprint of the godly emperor. Yi Qing Luo's voice was calm, and her enunciation was clear, narrating what everyone knew. This legend, in everyone's heart, it was just a legend. But today, they really saw the God Emperor's imprint on Yi Fengyu's forehead. Their hearts were all shocked. God Emperor's imprint. It really is the God Emperor's imprint. Elder Ancestor suddenly stood up from the soft chair. His hand that was holding onto the walking stick was also trembling nonstop. Tears welled up in his murky old eyes. She excitedly strode towards Yi Fengyu. The mark of the Divine Emperor. This generation of the Yi clan finally had someone with the Divine Emperor's mark. She had thought that Yi Tianquang's sins were too deep, causing this generation to lose the Divine Emperor's imprint and the recognition of the Divine Emperor. Because of this, that was why she felt uneasy because of Yi Qing Luo's identity. He was afraid that Yi Qing Luo's appearance was told to her by the Emperor of Gods through the God Emperor's imprint. The Three Springs sect might disappear from this world. Otherwise, how could the descendants of this generation have lost the mark of the Divine Emperor? When she saw the Divine Emperor's mark on Yi Fengyu's forehead, the old ancestor's heart was finally at ease. The person who has the Divine Emperor's mark is the successor chosen by the Divine Emperor himself. Old 8 is qualified. He is the most qualified to become. I don't believe it. Before the old ancestor could finish her words, she was interrupted by the sect elder's exasperated roar. Yi Qing Luo, I have the right to suspect that you want 8th young master to become the patriarch and deliberately use the matter of the Divine Emperor's imprint to deceive me. Chapter 21:13. The sect elder's behavior aroused the disgust of the crowd. Anyone could see the sect elder's ambition for the Three Springs sect at this moment. Under the leadership of the representatives of several forces, someone raised his arm and shouted, Yi Fengyu, the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. Yi Fengyu, the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. Yi Fengyu, the sect leader of the Three Springs sect. The orderly shouts were deafening. The sect elder's face turned ashen. He clenched his fists, feeling that he had no real power. He only had the title of sect elder. He could not stand in the Three Springs sect at all. He had not appeared for a few decades. These juniors dared to not give him face. Even the elder ancestor and Yi Tianquang had once respectfully knelt at his feet. Now they dared to question him. That was why he had no power. If he had real power, he could control the life and death of the Three Springs sect. How would the elder ancestor and the juniors of the Three Springs sect dare to treat him like this? The more the sect elder thought about it, the more unbalanced he felt. His face darkened. He reached out and pressed the red pattern on Yi Fengyu's forehead. He did not believe that the Divine Emperor's mark was real. It should be known that those who had the Divine Emperor's mark would have the mark appear on their forehead every new day. Their entire body would be cleansed by the power of the mark. Yi Fengyu had been in the Yi clan for 15 years. If Yi Fengyu had the Divine Emperor's mark, how could the Yi clan not have discovered its existence after so many years? This mark was a great honor for the descendants of the Yi clan. Would Yi Fengyu hide it from the Yi clan when he discovered that he had the mark? So, Yi Fengyu's mark was definitely fake. However, when the sect elder's hand touched the mark on Yi Fengyu's forehead, suddenly, a red light flowed out of Yi Fengyu's forehead and gathered in the center of his forehead. Whoosh! The red light turned into a sword of light and flew toward the sect elder's outstretched hand. The sect elder let out a blood-curdling scream as he was flung away by the red light and landed heavily on the ground. Then, the sect elder's face turned deathly pale as he struggled to crawl up from the ground. He knelt in Yifeng's direction and begged, Sect leader, please spare my life. This subordinate was blinded by greed and deserves to die 10,000 times. As soon as he said this, he completely admitted it. The mark on Yifeng's forehead. It was the mark of the Divine Emperor. Yifeng was personally appointed by the Divine Emperor to be the leader of the Three Springs faction. If Yifeng didn't have the qualifications to be the sovereign of the Three Springs sect, no one in the Yi clan had the right to do so. Immediately, the various forces stood up and began to congratulate him. Congratulations on inheriting the Three Springs sect leader. Even the luxurious garden had been razed to the ground, even if the succession ceremony was drenched in blood. However, it still couldn't suppress the joy that came from the bottom of everyone's heart. Without the interference of the sect's elders, the succession ceremony was extremely smooth. The sect elder appeared to be trembling with fear, as if he was afraid that Yifeng would act on a whim and use him as an example. If it was in the past, the position of the sect elder could be said to be on the same level as the sect leader. Although he had no real power, the sect leader still had to give him face and seek his opinion on everything. But this time, the sect leader was a difficult character to deal with. Behind him was an even more difficult and extremely arrogant and despotic Yiqing Luo. If these two juniors wanted to mess with him, they would absolutely not show any mercy. Chapter 21:14. After the succession ceremony ended, news of what had happened at the succession ceremony quickly spread. The mystery of Yiqing Luo's birth was also spread like wildfire. Some people were guessing who Yiqing Luo's biological father was. But there were also people who hated Yiqing Luo and started to ridicule her for not being a noble Yi family member and ridiculed her mother. But Yiqing Luo didn't bother about these. On the night when the succession ceremony ended, Yiqing Luo went to Bei Ming's room. In Bei Ming's room, she found the item that she used to exchange for Yifeng's life. In the secret compartment, there was a well-kept wooden box. She could tell that Bei Ming often cleaned this box and was very attentive in taking care of it. Before she opened the box, Old Man Song's surprised voice rang in Yiqing Luo's mind. Lass. Inside, there's a very familiar and strong presence inside. Yiqing Luo's hand, which was holding the wooden box, paused. Very familiar? Yes. I definitely felt this presence somewhere before. But now, I can't remember. Old Man Song's spirit body came out from the azure dew bracelet. Old Man Song circled around the wooden box a few times. Lass, this thing. If it really has something to do with your biological father, I'm afraid your future days will not be peaceful. Something that could make Old Man Song produce such a strong reaction. Yiqing Luo had a rough guess in her heart. Hearing Old Man Song's words, Yiqing Luo's fingers tightened. I know this body of mine, no matter if it's innate talent or profound jade heart, it's obviously different from ordinary people. Plus, she crossed over to this other world, contracted the azure dew bracelet, received Old Man Song's guidance. All showed that her background was extraordinary. It could be said that from the moment she found out that her profound jade heart was the one and only divine phoenix profound jade heart in the world. Yiqing Luo already had some suspicions. She wasn't a member of the Yi family. But today, she heard old Grandmadam and the rest personally said it. In other words, it confirmed her guess. Old Man Song, don't worry, I'm not an impulsive person. Yiqing Luo held the wooden box tightly. Even if I know the truth, I won't immediately search for my background. I won't act rashly before I'm strong enough to protect myself and the people around me. Yiqing Luo's eyes drooped as she gazed at the wooden box in her palm. Then, he put the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring. Today's matter will definitely spread like wildfire. Many people will speculate about my background. I think I should wait until you feel that I'm strong enough before I take a look at it. The ancients often said that a tall tree attracts the wind. More and more people were paying attention to Yiqing Luo. This would make more and more people start to suspect Yiqing Luo. Previously, there was Three Springs sect as a smokescreen, in addition to DMO Xian's reputation, suppressing the reason of Yiqing Luo's outstanding innate talent. But the news that Yiqing Luo was not a descendant of the Three Springs sect spread out. Yiqing Luo's innate talent was bound to be speculated by those with ulterior motives. As soon as Old Man Song touched the wooden box, he sensed the powerful aura inside. If someone were to find out, it would definitely be disadvantageous to Yiqing Luo. Placing the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring would conceal the box's aura. It's naturally the best that you can think this way. Old Man Song also heaved a sigh of relief. This old man was still thinking about how to persuade you to dispel the idea of searching for your background. Chapter 21:15. Old Man Song's eyes were filled with pity as he looked at the calm young lady. His heart was filled with heartache for her, and also filled with pride. She was indeed the young lady whom he fancied. She was able to maintain her calmness at any moment. A child with such a calm temperament, who remained unfazed in the face of danger. In future, she would definitely surpass his imagination. Old Man Song silently swore in his heart. As long as he was still able to exist in this world, he would protect this child. Yiqing Luo didn't know what Old Man Song was thinking about. After she kept the wooden box into the profound phoenix ring, she felt a strong force rushing into her blood vessels. It was only for a moment, and it was suppressed by the profound phoenix ring. But that feeling, although it was only for a moment, Yiqing Luo still remembered that feeling. And she was even more certain that sealing this thing in the profound phoenix ring was the right choice. On a faraway mountain which was enshrouded in celestial chi, in front of a huge towering tree, one black and one white were playing chess. Dong! The sound of chess pieces falling onto the chessboard was heard. That tall and straight man who was shrouded in a cloak, his fingers were stiff, still maintaining the posture of holding a chess piece. Opposite the cloaked man was a handsome gentleman in a white robe. The handsome gentleman looked at the cloaked man's black chess piece on the chessboard and smiled. What happened? You can't even hold the chess pieces properly. The cloaked man's stiff fingers on the chessboard curled up one by one. The plan has been disrupted. There's actually someone who can disrupt your plan? Could it be that woman? The handsome gentleman raised his brows in interest. The cloaked man's fingers clenched tightly. Under the cloak, that pair of treacherous cold eyes shot out a chilling intent. That slut actually left that thing in the lower realm. That thing, if it sees the light of day again, the people in the god realm will definitely find out about Yiqing Luo's whereabouts. Yiqing Luo? The handsome gentleman murmured this name. His smile became more and more playful. Is it the vessel that you keep? The cloaked man didn't reply. He suddenly slammed the chessboard and stood up. In a blink of an eye, the cloaked man had already disappeared from the top of the mountain. The handsome gentleman held on to a faint smile. His mouth muttered these three words. Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo. Nirvana Realm, Three Springs Sect. Yiqing Luo just came out from the Baiming clan's room. He saw Yifeng walking toward him. When he saw Yiqing Luo, his eyes shone brightly as he took a quick step forward. Sister, how is it? Do you know who your father is? It doesn't matter who my father is. Looking at his worried eyes, Yiqing Luo smiled lightly. No matter who it is, I will always be your sister. You? Of course you are my sister. Yifeng Yu held Yiqing Luo's wrist tightly. Our mothers are from the same mother. We have the same blood flowing in our veins. You are my biological sister. Yiqing Luo laughed lowly, raised her hand, and rubbed the boy who was a head taller than her. Silly Xiaoyu, don't you believe in your own mother? Mother is such a good woman. How could she betray Yi Tianquang, betray the path of women? Yifeng Yu's expression stiffened. The hand which was grabbing Yiqing Luo's wrist also paused for a moment. Yiqing Luo's words, of course he had thought about it. In his memory, although his mother didn't like his father, but she would absolutely not do anything that violated the path of women. But old Grand Madam personally admitted it. He and his sister were born from the same blood, but they were not biological siblings. But indeed, they were born from the same mother. In Yi Fengyu's heart, he was still unwilling to believe that his mother would betray his father. Chapter 21:16. Yi Qing Luo rubbed her brother's head hard. Silly Xiaoyu, even if we don't have the same blood flowing in our bodies, we are still biological siblings. You will always be my younger brother. These ancient people did not know. As someone from the 21st century, how could she not understand this common sense? If her mother really was pregnant with her before Yi Tianquang returned to the mansion, after that, it would be impossible for her to get pregnant with Yi Fengyu. Between her and Yi Fengyu, there must be a child who wasn't her mother's biological child. Yi Fengyu was a descendant of a Yi family. That also meant that she wasn't born from her mother. As for why it turned out to be her and Yi Fengyu's twin, perhaps only mother would know the secret behind it. Sister. After listening to Yi Qing Luo's words, Yi Fengyu's eyes became misty. Yes, I will always be your brother. Yes, no matter what the truth was. The sibling relationship between him and his sister was real, and that was enough. That's right, big sister, the old ancestor said. She has something to talk to you about. She's waiting for you in the hall. Yi Fengyu suddenly recalled the reason why he came to look for Yi Qing Luo and lowered his voice. Elder sister, old grandmadam is getting on in years, and everything she has done, although it's very unfair to you, but it's all for the sake of the Yi family. If it's possible, can elder sister not blame old grandmadam? Yi Fengyu knew that his request to Yi Qing Luo was too much. He had seen everything that old grandmadam had done to Yi Qing Luo in the past, and that had aroused his anger. However, when he thought of the scene that the old ancestor had just witnessed, in the end, Yi Fengyu's heart softened. After all, this was his grandmother. It was his biological grandmother. I'm not asking you to tolerate her. After saying that, Yi Fengyu hurriedly added, I just wanted to say if the old ancestor didn't target you, could big sister, I understand. Yi Qing Luo patted Yi Fengyu's shoulder. Looking at his frightened look, she couldn't help but pull his face. I'm not a man-eating tiger. If she doesn't provoke me, I naturally won't intentionally provoke her. Moreover, I still want to ask her about the details of what happened back then. Yi Fengyu immediately beamed with joy. He knew that his sister would do what she promised him. He absolutely believed that the elder ancestor would no longer target his sister. The Three Springs sect and the Yi clan were either dead or crippled. He only had his ancestor and his sister as his relatives. She followed Yi Fengyu into the hall one after the other. There was only one person sitting in the hall. It was just the old ancestor alone. Yi Qing Luo squinted at old grandmadam and saw that on her aged face, her eyes were slightly red. Apparently, she had cried earlier. Yi Qing Luo could faintly guess what old grandmadam wanted her to discuss about. It seemed that the two of them had reached a consensus. He wanted to talk about what had happened in the past. This was good as well. If their goals were the same, at least they wouldn't have a falling out, and Yi Fengyu would be stuck in the middle. Yi Qing Luo walked into the main hall and sat down on the soft chair on old grandmadam's right-hand side. Seeing Yi Qing Luo, old grandmadam hinted with her eyes. Yi Fengyu immediately walked to the door, and with a wave of his perception, he closed the door of the hall. Old grandmadam stood up, and her hand, which was holding onto the walking stick, trembled slightly. Old 7. Today it's all thanks to... Yi Qing Luo raised her hand and interrupted old grandmadam's words. Chapter 21:17. The old ancestor's face stiffened. Seeing this, Yi Fengyu was worried that the atmosphere would become stiff, so he immediately smiled and tried to smooth things over. Ancestor, elder sister is just worried about your health. So many things have happened today. Ancestor must be tired. Elder sister just wants to finish talking so that you can rest. Old grandmadam stared at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. His sinister and treacherous eyes were shrouded in a complicated and incomprehensible light. She gradually loosened her grip on her walking stick. After a long while, she let out a heavy sigh and fell back into her seat. Old 7th, I know you were blaming me. Elder ancestor closed her eyes weakly. If I had known that you had no interest in Three Springs sect, I wouldn't have said such a thing in public. to spread the news that Yi Qing Luo wasn't a descendant of a Yi family. It wasn't only Yi Qing Luo's reputation that was ruined. It wasn't only the reputation of Yi Fengyu's mother. It was also the reputation of the entire Three Springs sect. After all, Yi Fengyu's mother had been dead for almost 10 years. She was also carrying the title of the mistress of the Yi family, Madame Yi. When Madame Yi was alive, she secretly had an affair with a mysterious man and gave birth to a baby girl. This made Three Springs sect become the laughingstock of the Nirvana realm. Moreover, old Grand Madam wanted to make use of Yi Qing Luo's current status in the Nirvana realm to boost Three Springs sect's prestige. This idea was no longer feasible now. Since the matter has already happened, no matter how much you repent, you will not be able to erase what you have done. Yi Qing Luo's words were impolite, but her tone was extremely calm. Her tone was very calm. Ancestor, I'm sure you know why I came here. There's no need to say anything else. Just tell me the details of what happened back then. The elder ancestor's facial muscles trembled. His shriveled lips moved as if he wanted to say something. But when he met Yi Qing Luo's calm and clear eyes, all the words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat. Old Madam was deeply aware that she had let Yi Qing Luo down. If it wasn't for Yi Qing Luo, Three Springs sect would not only fall into the hands of an outer sect elder, more importantly, the Three Springs sect might really fall because of this. And she would personally destroy the eighth brother who was recognized by the Divine Emperor towards Yi Qing Luo's attitude. The old ancestor didn't say anything in the end. She took a deep breath and calmed herself down. He then looked towards Yi Qing Luo as he told her everything that he knew back then in full detail. Things were roughly the same as what he had learned during the succession ceremony. Old Grand Madam then told Yi Qing Luo in detail what had happened. Yi Tianquang had been working in other continents for several months and hadn't returned to the Three Springs sect. At that time, the Three Springs sect was managed by the elder ancestor. One day, when Madame Yuchi was accompanying her ancestor for a stroll in the garden, she found Madame Yi acting mysteriously in the rockery in the garden. Madame Yi was obviously more flustered after being exposed by the great ancestor. Under Madame Yuchi's vague guidance, the grand elder ancestor thought of the words cheating on a man. However, after a thorough investigation, the elder ancestor did not find any traces of other men in the rockery, although this matter was left unsettled. However, a seed of doubt was planted in the heart of the old ancestor. Naturally, he began to pay more attention to Madame Yi. The more he paid attention, the more he felt that Madame Yi was hiding a huge secret. The more he paid attention, the more he felt that Madame Yi was hiding a huge secret. Chapter 21:18. Until 2 months before Yi Tianquang was about to return to the Western continent, the elder ancestor discovered that Madame Yi's body was getting weaker and weaker, and she was retching from time to time. At first, he was able to appear at the family dinner at noon. However, after a long time, Madame Yi seemed to smell the delicacies on the table and began to vomit. In the end, he could only hide in his own courtyard, unable to go out. Madame Yuchi unintentionally mentioned that this was the same as when she was pregnant with Yi Qing Qian and Yi Qing Ling. The grand elder, who had suspected that Madame Yi was having an affair, immediately felt that Madame Yi was pregnant with another man's child. The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more he felt that his guess was correct. However, Madame Yi's methods were too brilliant. Even if a doctor came, there was no way to accurately diagnose that Madame Yi was pregnant. But the more he couldn't find anything, the more he couldn't. The grand elder became even more suspicious. Elder ancestor thought that when Madame Yi's belly became bigger, nothing could be hidden anymore. Thus, after waiting for 2 months, Yi Tianquang returned to the Three Springs sect. During this period of time, old ancestor had been keeping an eye on Madame Yi, but he didn't find anything that could be used against her. She didn't see Madame Yi's belly getting bigger. After Yi Tianquang returned, the old ancestor wanted to find an opportunity to talk about this matter with his son, who knew that before she could find her son. He heard his son going to Madame Yi's courtyard. He didn't leave the courtyard until the afternoon of the second day. This infuriated the concubines of the other 2 branches. Madame Yuchi was especially enraged and immediately ran to the elder ancestor to fan the flames. The old ancestor had originally been suspicious of Madame Yi. When he heard that his own son had actually stayed in Madame Ye's courtyard for a whole day, he couldn't help but secretly curse Madame Yi as a vixen. While dragging his own son, he told Yi Tianquang his own guess. Yi Tianquang didn't really care. He knew very well whether his woman was pregnant or not. However, the Grand Elder insisted that Madame Yi was having an affair and that she was pregnant with a bastard. Yi Tianquang was helpless. He could only tell the old ancestor why he had come to Madame Ye's courtyard. After that, the old ancestor no longer asked about this matter. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Then came the news that Madame Yi was pregnant. The more the old ancestor thought about it, the more she felt that Madame Yi had schemed everything. She wanted to give Yi Tianquang the child she had slept with another man. However, Yi Tianquang had already specifically warned them. He stopped her from acting rashly. The old ancestor could only endure it. Sure enough, Madame Yi gave birth prematurely in less than 8 months of pregnancy. This time, there was no need for Madame Yuchi to sow discord. The old ancestor couldn't believe Madame Yi. But after Yi Qingluo was born, however, news came that Yi Fengyu was in a critical condition and was on the verge of death. This news made the Grand Elder, who wanted to find Madame Yi to test her blood to prove her innocence, confused. Adultery and pregnancy were all her guesses. She couldn't find any evidence. Furthermore, Yi Tianquang had spent the night in Madame Ye's courtyard after returning, so he was very certain that Madame Yi wasn't pregnant. It was highly possible that the child would really be the legitimate son of the Yi family. If he didn't save them, what should they do after harming the legitimate son of the Yi clan? Especially since the divine emperor's mark had yet to appear on the other young masters and ladies. Then, after much consideration, the elder ancestor decided to use the forbidden technique to save the son of the Yi clan. Chapter 21:19. These are all that this old one knows. Everything that has happened. Recalling the past events, old Grandmadame's eyes were already hazy. Yi Fengyu took the soft silk handkerchief by the side and wiped old Grandmadame's eyes. It's all in the past, old Grandmadame. No matter if my sister is my biological sister or not, in my heart, she is my biological sister. His voice was very soft. However, the force in his words was sonorous and forceful, leaving no room for doubt. The great ancestor lightly patted the back of Yi Fengyu's hand, moved his hand away, and lightly sighed. This old one is old. The future is the era of you young people. Now that this old one has seen your divine emperor's mark, I also believe in your ability. Saying that, old Grandmadame raised her head and looked at the young face in front of her, revealing a kind smile that she hadn't shown for a long time. Grandma said before, Grandma will not interfere with your decision. What she meant, even if Yi Fengyu wanted Three Springs sect to become Yi Qingluo's solid backing in the future, she wouldn't say a word more. Yi Fengyu nodded hard. Grandma, don't worry, I will definitely make Three Springs sect flourish. Old Grandmadame smiled as she looked at Yi Qingluo, old 7, although Grandmother had exposed your background in front of so many people today, but everything that you have done for Three Springs sect, Grandmother has seen it all. From today onwards, Grandma will not interfere with anything in Three Springs sect. You are still the 7th Missy of Three Springs sect, the number 7 in Grandma's heart. I only hope you don't blame Grandma and can help Grandma protect number 8. Needless to say, I will also protect little you. Yi Qingluo's tone was still indifferent. What you said earlier, I still have a few questions to ask in detail. Old Grandmadame had long expected that she would still have questions, so she nodded slowly. Ask away. You said, regarding your suspicion of my mother having an affair outside, it was because you and Madame Yuchi saw it together in the garden? Old Grandmadame was stunned and nodded. Yes. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes. Then, after you sensed that my mother's situation was not right, as if she was having an affair, you investigated my mother. At that time, was Madame Yuchi by your side? Yes. When old Madame heard Yi Qingluo's question, Her heart faintly seemed to have grasped something. Right, Madame Yuchi. She had always been by my side. The Yuchi clan. Yi Qing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she leaned against the soft chair. This Madame Yuchi hated her mother to the core. Her mother's death. It was definitely related to Madame Yuchi. Back then, Mother was suspected by the old ancestor of having an affair with someone else. It must also be a trap set by the Yuchi clan. It was very likely the reason why her mother had chosen to have her and Yi Fengyu be born as a pair of twins. Madame Yuchi might know. She should be glad that she only wanted to make Madame Yuchi's life a living hell and did not kill her. He even fed Madame Yuchi a pill that would make her unable to breathe, as long as Madame Yuchi was still alive. It was a piece of cake to pry information out of her mouth. Yi Qing Luo raised her head and asked again, then, that year you always suspected that my mother was pregnant with someone else's child, and Yi Tianquang stayed in my mother's courtyard for such a long time. What did Yi Tianquang say to you that made you accept my mother? Old Grand Madame's expression stiffened. Looking at Yi Qing Luo's expression, his gaze seemed to be dodging. Chapter 21:20. Old Grand Madame's eyes kept dodging, not daring to look at Yi Qing Luo's eyes. After Yi Qing Luo finished asking these words, the corners of her mouth raised into a bright smile again. Her enchanting eyes were curved, long, and charming. Old Grand Madame, you can choose not to say what happened in the past. Her voice was still as calm as ever, as if nothing could move her in the slightest. Then, what you want, I can also choose to turn them all into ashes. Old Grand Madame's dodging eyes stopped. Her old eyes suddenly widened, looking at her in shock, as if she didn't believe her words. What Old Grand Madame hoped for was that Three Springs sect could be safe. The current patriarch of Three Springs sect was Yi Fengyu. How could Yi Qing Luo be willing to let Yi Fengyu's Three Springs sect be destroyed? You know, little Yu is very obedient to me. Yi Qing Luo smiled, smiling disapprovingly. Without Three Springs sect, I can still give him Four Springs sect, Five Springs sect. Her voice paused, her smile became more and more brilliant. If you don't believe me, you can try. Old Grand Madame's face was completely livid. On her old face, there was a dark cloud. Compared to Yi Qing Luo's smiling face, it formed a sharp contrast. Old Grand Madame's fingers clasped tightly on the walking stick. She suppressed the anger in her heart. He kept brainwashing himself in his heart. Today was different from the past. Old Eight's future, the future of Three Springs sect, must be supported by Yi Qing Luo. Even for Three Springs sect, for Old Eight. Whatever Yi Qing Luo wanted to know, she must tell Yi Qing Luo. Old Grand Madame suppressed the anger in her heart, staring at Yi Qing Luo, answering word by word. In your mother's hands, there is something that Tianquang wants. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyebrows. She had some guesses about this point. If it wasn't for the fact that her mother held something that Yi Tianquang wanted, or some secret. And this thing, it was not only beneficial to Yi Tianquang, it was also beneficial to Three Springs sect. Otherwise, Old Grand Madame would not be so easily convinced. Otherwise, Yi Tianquang would not exchange the position of young patriarch. Yi Qing Luo half squinted her eyes and asked with a smile, "What is it?" "I don't know what it is exactly." Elder Ancestor shook her head. Tianquang did not tell me too much about it. He only told me that this thing concerns the future of Three Springs sect. Yi Qing Luo raised her eyebrows slightly. Clearly, he did not believe it. The old ancestor frowned. "Since I promised you that I would tell you what I know, it is naturally true." "Really?" Yi Qing Luo continued to raise her brows and smiled. That smile caused annoyance to rise up in the old ancestor's heart for some reason. Old ancestor leaned on his walking stick and slammed it heavily on the ground. He simply let go and said directly, "Tianquang married your mother because he wanted that thing on her body. But your mother was always on guard against Tianquang. Even after they got married, she didn't hand that thing over to Tianquang. Back then, when Tianquang returned from another continent, he went to your mother's courtyard because your mother used that item to lure him to her courtyard. Old Eighth, it's your mother. She used that item to trade for it." When these words were spoken, Not only Yi Qing Luo's expression changed, Yi Feng Yu's complexion suddenly turned pale. Father married mother, just for one thing? And he was also exchanged for that thing by his mother? Yi Qing Luo's heart was also shocked. What was the thing that Yi Tianquang had been thinking about for so long? Even after they got married, her mother didn't give that thing to Yi Tianquang. Chapter 21-21. But why did mother use that thing to beg Yi Tianquang for a child? Could it be that mother had a reason to need a child at that time? Once she thought of her family, they were born from the same family. Yi Qing Luo's mind suddenly had a very bold idea. Mother begged Yi Tianquang for a child. Was it for her? This thought made Yi Qing Luo's heart suddenly beat extremely fast. She clenched her fingers and asked. Mother wanted a child, and Yi Tianquang gave it, but the thing? Mother still didn't give it to Yi Tianquang? Because of what happened to you. Old grandmadam closed her eyes. Because you're not of the Yi family's bloodline, Tianquang wanted to kill you. It was your mother who stopped Tianquang and used that thing to threaten him. So, I was able to become the young matriarch for so many years. It was all because my mother used that thing to exchange for it. In this way, all the previous doubts made sense. Old grandmadam nodded. Yes, Tianquang promised your mother that the position of young matriarch will be kept for you until the day you reach marriageable age. As long as you live until then, that thing will automatically return to Tianquang's hands. Live until marriageable age, Yi Qing Luo lowered her eyes. This body was 15 years old this year, just reached marriageable age. And she, at this time, because the original owner of this body died, she took over this body. In other words, because this year, this body reached marriageable age. Therefore, Yi Tianquang allowed Yi Qingqian and Yi Qingling to plot to destroy her. Dig out the profound jade heart. Destroy her innocence. Attempt to take her life. Then, now that I have reached marriageable age, is that thing already in Yi Tianquang's hands? Yi Qing Luo asked. Yi Qing Luo couldn't distinguish this problem now. Yi Tianquang should have obtained that thing. Otherwise, he wouldn't have acted against her and let his two daughters use this kind of cruel method to take her life when she was 15 years old. But if Yi Tianquang really obtained that thing he had schemed for most of his life. With Yi Tianquang's temperament, he should have announced it long ago and made everyone know so that everyone would admire him. Moreover, this was equivalent to having something to protect his life. How could he have been killed by Yi Fengru? How could he have been stripped of his position as sect master? No. Old grandmadam looked at Yi Qing Luo, and it wasn't hard to tell that in her tone there was some suppressed anger. This anger was for Madam Yi. Your mother has lied to all of us. From the beginning to the end, she had never thought of handing that thing over to Tianquang. She's just using that thing to fool the Yi family. The old ancestor leaned back in the soft chair. The old voice trembled with anger. There's no such thing. You've reached the marriageable age, but that thing still hasn't appeared. And your mother died a long time ago. She's dead. No one knows where she hid that thing. She was angry, but also upset. Madame Ye's death was caused by her and Madame Yuqi. She let Madame Yi die. It was because he could not bear to see Madame Yi use that thing to threaten Tianquang time and again. He was also completely sure that after Yi Qing Luo reached the age of 15, she would definitely get that item. But in the end, he didn't expect this kind of ending. Old grandmadam's old eyes suddenly opened wide. He stared at Yi Qing Luo without blinking. Chapter 21-22. Old grandmadam seemed to have thought of something and suddenly stood up. Her hand that was holding the walking stick tightened and trembled. Her eyes widened and the expression on her face kept changing. Yi Qing Luo, you and your mother deliberately teamed up to make fun of the Yi family. No wonder old grandmadam thought so. Yi Tianquang had never told old grandmadam what he was after. He only knew that with that thing, Three Springs sect would have the hope to become the leader of the four major sections. That thing was extremely important. Otherwise, Yi Tianquang wouldn't have spent most of his life trying to get that thing from Madame Yi. In the beginning, all the agreement was to wait until Yi Qing Luo reached marriageable age. And after Yiqing Luo reached marriageable age, Yiqing Luo had undergone earth-shaking changes. In just a few months' time, from a waste with no ability to cultivate to a sky mystic supremacy, and her whole person seemed to have changed into another person. This was very likely it was not caused by the Overlord, but Madame Yi gave that thing to Yiqing Luo. Therefore, Yiqing Luo advanced by leaps and bounds. The more she thought so, the more old Grand Madame's heart trembled. She was also more and more determined in her own thoughts. Old Grand Madame, Yi Fengyu was the first to react and hurriedly hugged old Grand Madame's arm. Sister can't be the kind of person, mother can't be the kind of person either, although Yi Fengyu was still young when his mother died. But Yi Fengyu remembered very clearly. His mother, for him and his sister, even if she was humiliated in the Yi family, she never made a sound. His mother, even if she wore tattered clothes, lived in a shabby place, suffered from those servants' and other concubines' insults. But his mother was still so noble and elegant, clean and pure, without the slightest bit of resentment. His mother would never go through so much trouble to scheme against his father and the Yi clan. Old Grand Madame's body weight was mostly on Yi Fengyu. Old Grand Madame's eyes flashed with hazy tears. Her voice was so tight that it was hard to spit out from her throat. Yiqing Luo, did your mother give that thing to you? No. Yiqing Luo shook her head and replied calmly. I was only 5 years old when my mother died. No, that's not right. If she didn't give it to you, how could she have let that thing? She gave it to you. The old ancestor shook his head in panic. That item was Yi Tianquang's obsession. Now, it had become the obsession of the old ancestor. That item sounds very powerful. If I had obtained that item long ago, I wouldn't have given you the opportunity to bully me for 15 years. Yiqing Luo's voice was still calm, without any fluctuation of emotions. The old ancestor was stunned. His stiff body finally fell back onto the soft chair. Fortunately, Yi Fengyu had been supporting the old ancestor, preventing the old ancestor from falling due to his weak body. For a moment, the entire hall fell into a dead silence. After some time, old Grand Madame slowly opened her eyes and looked at Yiqing Luo tiredly as she sighed heavily. Forget it, forget it. The past matters are all in the past. No matter if that thing had disappeared from this world along with your mother, or if it has already landed in your hands, it has nothing to do with the Yi family. Chapter 21-23. After Yi Fengyu sent old Grand Madame back to the courtyard, Yiqing Luo had already left the main hall. Looking at the empty main hall, his mind recalled the conversation between old Grand Madame and Yiqing Luo earlier. He shut his eyes heavily. He was the child that his mother used that thing to exchange for. What was the purpose of his birth? Numerous thoughts, like fried dough twist, intertwined together in his mind. He almost couldn't breathe as he was entangled. His hands, which were hanging by the side of his body, slowly clenched into fists. The muscles on his entire body, at this moment, formed into distinct lines. Suddenly, he opened his eyes. No, he had to ask his sister clearly. Otherwise, his heart would not be at peace. Yiqing Luo was walking quickly towards her own courtyard. From old Grand Madame's words, she could almost guess what was the thing that old Grand Madame was talking about. But she had to confirm at once. After confirming, she then went over to Madame Yuqi's side. Asked clearly, what secret did Madame Yuqi discover that year on her mother, which made Madame Yuqi to make old Grand Madame misunderstand that her mother was outside, having an illicit relationship. Yiqing Luo had just walked in her own courtyard when Zhang San and Zhang Si suddenly ran over in a fluster. Seventh miss, seventh miss. Bad news, bad news. Yiqing Luo's footsteps halted as she turned her head to look behind her. Seventh miss, Madame Yuqi. Madame Yuqi has been killed. Zhang San panted heavily, his expression unsightly as he said, this subordinate knows that Madame Yuqi is still useful to seventh miss, so she locked Madame Yuqi in her courtyard. Tonight, this subordinate and Zhang Si will watch over Madame Yuqi's dean together, but, Zhang San turned his head away in shame, with a look that he found it hard to speak. Zhang Si gritted his teeth. When we were on night watch, we saw a figure scuttling into Madame Yuchi's courtyard, so I immediately chased after it. But when I followed the aura and chased to the warehouse, there was no trace of that figure. And then, we heard a miserable shriek from Madame Yuchi's room. When we rushed over to Madame Yuchi's room, Zhang Si lowered his head as he clenched his fists tightly. Madame Yuchi was killed with one stab, and there were no traces of the murderer at the scene. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Madame Yuchi died just like that? Moreover, he was killed under the watch of Zhang San and Zhang Si. She was very clear about Zhang San and Zhang Si's strength. They were the two leaders of the Three Springs sex guards. Their profound grades were all around the 7th grade of the Earth Profound Realm. Trying to kill someone right under their noses without leaving any traces behind? Could it be the people from the Godless Island again? Moreover, there could be more than one murderer. One should know that the warehouse and Madame Yuchi's bedroom were in the north and south respectively. Although it was just a courtyard, it wasn't too big. However, walking back and forth would take at least half an incense stick's time. Zhang San and Zhang Si chased him to the warehouse to search for the killer's scent. Then, he heard screams coming from the bedroom. It only took a few breaths. There was no way he could do it alone. Take me there. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as she walked towards the direction of Madame Weiqi's courtyard with a gloomy expression. She was just about to look for Madame Yuchi and ask about what happened back then. Madame Yuchi died. How could there be such a coincidence? The murderer killed Madame Yuchi, no matter what his motive was. Chapter 21-24. He walked to the gate of Madame Yuchi's yard. The guards who had already formed a circle greeted respectfully when they saw Yiqing Luo, 7th Mississippi, after Yi Fengyu inherited the Three Springs sect. Yiqing Luo was no longer the young matriarch of the Three Springs sect. Even if Yiqing Luo wasn't a descendant of the Yi family, these Three Springs sect's guards and servants had treated Yiqing Luo as the Yi family's 7th miss from the bottom of their hearts. How is it? Yiqing Luo took quick steps forward and entered the courtyard. Have you found any clues? The guards followed behind her and looked at each other. They lowered their heads and said apologetically, "We're sorry, Miss 7. We've searched the entire courtyard and didn't find any traces left behind by the murderer." After Zhang San and Zhang Si sensed Madame Yuchi's death, they immediately left. He immediately sealed off the courtyard and arranged for the guards to thoroughly investigate the courtyard. In such a short period of time, the murderer should not have had the chance to leave the courtyard. But not a single hair of the murderer could be found in any corner of the courtyard. Either that, or the murderer was still in the yard. Or, the murderer's speed was so fast that he could come and go without a trace. Yiqing Luo followed Zhang San and Zhang Si to Madame Yuchi's bedroom. Before she even got close, Yiqing Luo could smell a thick stench of blood. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly. Zhang San pushed open the door and said in a low voice, after bringing Madame Yuchi back to the courtyard, her body started to fester. If it wasn't for 7th young lady's pills that kept her alive, she would have died long ago. In other words, the stench of blood did not only come from the cut on Madame Yuchi's neck, but also from the wounds all over her body. Madame Yuchi was indeed miserable. On her body, there's almost not a piece of intact, almost. She was lying on the bed with a knife wound on her neck. Blood was still gushing out. Her eyes were wide open, filled with fear and unwillingness. The room was filled with the stench of rotten meat and blood. When the guards behind him saw the festering, bloody corpses and the stench filling the air, they couldn't help but shudder in fear. They all felt nauseous. Some of the maids who followed along to join in the fun directly leaned against the wall and vomited. However, their 7th miss, with a straight face, wandered around the room, even when his gaze was fixed on the corpse. His eyes did not blink, and his expression was calm. This courage, this determination. One had to know that 7th miss was only a 15-year-old girl. Those who didn't know better would think that their 7th young mistress was a murderous demon who spent her days on piles of corpses. Yiqing Luo wandered around the room, but didn't find any useful clues. It was indeed as Zhang San and Zhang Si had said. Other than the knife mark on Madame Yuchi's neck, the murderer did not leave any other marks that belonged to him. What was the murderer's motive? Madame Yuchi had now become neither human nor ghost. Whether she lived or died, it didn't seem to affect anyone. Moreover, it was obvious that Madame Yuchi would not live for long. Why did the murderer have to kill Madame Yuchi at this time? He knew that she wanted to ask Madame Yuchi about what happened in the past. Did he want to stop her from finding out what happened back then? Or did he have other motives? Yiqing Luo was in deep thoughts. Her ears suddenly twitched and her eyelashes trembled slightly. Her enchanting eyes, which were scanning the surroundings, slowly retracted and looked at the people behind her. You can leave first. Send someone to watch over each courtyard. If there's any situation, inform me immediately. Yiqing Luo said calmly. Chapter 21-25. Yiqing Luo looked at Zhang San and Zhang Si, as well as the rest of the servants. All of you leave first, especially the two of you. Go to Matriarch's courtyard to guard and ensure Matriarch's safety. Zhang San and Zhang Si looked at each other. Seventh Miss. We'll leave one of us to accompany you. No need. Yiqing Luo shook her head. Even if you're here, you're not the murderer's opponent and will drag me down instead. Zhang San and Zhang Si. Although this was the truth, but there was no need to say it out so directly. The two of them decisively led the bunch of servants out. There was only Yiqing Luo left in the entire house. Yiqing Luo didn't stay in the house. She lifted her feet and walked out of Madame Yuchi's bedroom. She released her perception and sensed that the guards and servants were already in Madame Yuchi's courtyard. Yiqing Luo lightly curled her lips as she raised her head and fixed her gaze on a spot in the dark, starry sky. Since you're here, why not show yourself directly? The wind blew, swirling Yiqing Luo's fine black hair. The young lady was dressed in red with jet black hair, a stunning beauty, against the reflection of the fire in the courtyard, as though she was shrouded in a layer of light. She looked like a pure and holy nine heavens fairy, like a dream. There was no response from the air. Yiqing Luo wasn't in a hurry. She maintained the posture of looking up at the starry sky. The expression on her face was tranquil and elegant. After a long time, she moved her pink lips and yawned tiredly. If you're not willing to show yourself, then I'll go back. In the middle of the night, she didn't have the energy to accompany that lunatic to admire the moon. She'd rather go back and sleep to replenish the energy she had used today. Yiqing Luo finished her words and turned around to leave. She had just turned around when a hurricane struck her from behind. Yiqing Luo didn't avoid it. That hurricane had no murderous intent or vicious intent. Yiqing Luo smiled as she turned her head back. Finally willing to show yourself? Behind her, the man in the hurricane was surrounded by layers of airflow. The man was dressed in a crimson, luxurious robe. Under the agitation of the hurricane, was like a jumping flame. His figure was outstanding, and he was handsome. The red robe on his body did not reveal any demonic aura, but instead, it made the man's entire body emitted a dense coldness. That innate aura was so strong that it made people want to submit. The most eye-catching part of him was his eyes, which were filled with coldness. It was clearly bottomless, as deep as the sea. There seemed to be countless whirlpools within, attracting one's soul. However, his eyes were covered with a layer of coldness, so that when people see him, she subconsciously lowered her head, not daring to look at him. Even if it was Yiqing Luo, she was also frozen by the frost beneath his eyes. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she looked at him. Zhu Xan, long time no see. The person that had arrived was precisely Zhu Wuxin. After parting ways in the flame lair, she had not seen Zhu Wuxin again. Who would have thought that he would actually come to the West Continent and come to the Three Springs sect to find her? Zhu Wuxian stared at Yiqing Luo, as though he was trying to find a trace of fluctuation from her face. However, he was still disappointed in the end. The expression on Yiqing Luo's face had a faint smile, and the gaze she used to look at him was calm and distant. You knew I was here. Zhu Wuxian used a declarative sentence. Yiqing Luo's reaction apparently showed that she had long guessed that the person in the dark was him. No, it's just that I smelled a familiar plum fragrance earlier. This isn't the winter season. The only person who can have such a unique feeling is you alone. Chapter 21-26. Zhu Wuxin's black eyes were fixed on her. All of a sudden, his thin lips curled into a frivolous smile, which made him look even more evil and cold. What? Now that you and Dizun are in a loving relationship, you can't bear to see me used to have a relationship with you? Yiqing Luo's face sunk. The one who had a relationship with you is not me. Not you? Zhu Wuxian slowly walked towards Yiqing Luo as he stretched out his hand and grabbed her wrist. Yiqing Luo struggled and wanted to retreat, but Zhu Wuxin's strength was too great. The more he struggled, the tighter he gripped. What do you want to do? Yiqing Luo frowned and simply stopped struggling. Zhu Wuxin pulled open her sleeve, revealing half of her arm. How do you explain the birthmark here? Zhu Wuxin's cold voice was right next to her ear. It was like an icy hand that was seeping into her heart through her eardrums. Yiqing Luo shuddered as she speedily retracted her hand. This time, Zhu Wuxin did not force her. Yiqing Luo successfully retracted her hand as she pulled down her sleeves. Zhu Wuxian, what do you try to prove? Zhu Wuxian's smile did not diminish, but the coldness in his eyes was frightening. Only you have this birthmark. Yiqing Luo. If you're not her, then there's only one possibility. Zhu Wuxin suddenly lowered his voice, and there was a thick sense of treachery in his words. You have been possessed by a ninja. Yiqing Luo's heart trembled as her body froze. Zhu Wuxian slowly straightened his body as his icy cold piercing eyes stared at Yiqing Luo without blinking. Then, I will use all means to recover my original body, to snatch my Qing Luo back. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly as her slender brows knitted into a bundle. She absolutely believed that Zhu Wuxin was serious. If Zhu Wuxian confirmed that she wasn't the original Yiqing Luo, she would be determined to be the one who possessed her body. Possession, as the name suggested, was to borrow someone else's body to reincarnate. Zhu Wuxian wanted to restore the original Yiqing Luo to her original self. That would also mean that he had to chase her out from Yiqing Luo's body. As for Zhu Wuxin, since he would say such a thing, this also meant that Zhu Wuxin had already investigated and made preparations in this aspect. As long as he was certain that she wasn't the real Yiqing Luo, Zhu Wuxin would make a move on her. This lunatic. Yiqing Luo secretly gritted her teeth. She really didn't know how the previous Yiqing Luo, who was so delicate and weak, had provoked this lunatic. Yiqing Luo, you're the only woman that I have feelings for. I will not let you go. Zhu Wuxian looked at Yiqing Luo's changing expression as his lips twitched coldly. Yiqing Luo, you can't escape. The man's icy cold gaze made Yiqing Luo extremely disgusted. Her eyes flickered slightly as she took a few steps back and raised her head to look at him. Zhu Wuxian, whether you let go or not has nothing to do with me. If you insist on using such a ridiculous method to make yourself comfortable, to prove that the Yiqing Luo in your mind still exists, then up to you. Zhu Wuxin's cold eyes stared at her without blinking. The dense, murderous aura seemed to want to engulf her. However, even after a long time, Zhu Wuxin did not make a move. Only that bone-piercing chill didn't dissipate for a long time. Yiqing Luo, long time no see. Let me give you a present. After half an incense stick of silence, Zhu Wuxian suddenly opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she silently wondered what tricks Zhu Wuxian was playing. Following that, she saw Zhu Wuxian throwing a lump of something towards her. Chapter 21-27. It was a woman's voice. Give her a woman as a gift? Normal people really couldn't keep up with a madman's train of thought. Yiqing Luo lowered her head and looked at the sack by her feet. She lifted her leg and kicked it. The person in the sack struggled violently. Looking at Yiqing Luo's bored look, Zhu Wuxian's gaze turned colder. Yiqing Luo, I will come and look for you again. You are mine. After Zhu Wuxian finished his words, he didn't bother about Yi Qing Luo's reaction. He turned around and leaped onto the wall. Zhu Wuxin. Yi Qing Luo suddenly spoke out. Zhu Wuxin's footsteps halted. Her crimson robe looked extremely beautiful under the night sky. I'll tell you one last time, you're the only one who's lost in the past. Yi Qing Luo's chilly voice had no emotions at all. You and I, when we were young, totally didn't know what love is. Marrying when you say you want to, marrying when you want. A marriage without any feelings can't be taken seriously. Zhu Wuxin's back was very straight. He did not look back. An ice-cold voice faintly sounded, but I took it seriously. Just as Zhu Wuxin finished speaking, a voice came from outside the courtyard. Elder sister. Yi Fengyu hurriedly rushed over, and when he saw Yi Qing Luo standing at the entrance of the courtyard, he quickly jogged over. His gaze was fixed on the red-clothed man standing on the wall facing the wind. Startled, he widened his eyes. My savior. Zhu Wuxin glanced sideways at Yi Fengyu. Without replying to Yi Fengyu, his figure flashed, and he turned into an afterimage, disappearing into the night. Savior, don't go. Yi Fengyu rushed forward, trying to make him stay. However, Zhu Wuxin was too fast. Yi Fengyu helplessly stood in the corner, looking in the direction in which Zhu Wuxin had disappeared. Yi Qing Luo was puzzled and walked to his side. Savior? Are you talking about him? Yi Fengyu hurriedly turned back. Sister, when Yi Qing Qian joined forces with the Dark Forces to invade Three Springs Sect, it was him. He was the one who saved me and Ling Er. The person who saved Yi Fengyu was actually Zhu Wuxian. She owed Zhu Wuxin another favor. Sister, do you know him? Did he come especially to find you? Yi Fengyu looked in the direction that Zhu Wuxian had left, his face full of excitement. Yi Qing Luo shook her head. He was just passing by and sent something over. Yi Fengyu's face was full of excitement. Big sister, if we meet again, you must bring me along. I want to properly thank him. If it wasn't for him this time, I definitely wouldn't have made it. Yes. Yi Qing Luo rubbed Yi Fengyu's head as she was still feeling bewildered. Zhu Wuxian, who looked like an ice cube. How could he possibly specially save Yi Fengyu? And Ziling from Three Springs Sect? Could it be Zhu Wuxin did it for her? He knew that she cared about these two people very much. So he specially saved them from Yi Qing Qian's hands and specially threw them to the Mu brothers? Suddenly, a woman's groan came from the gunny sack that was struggling on the ground, interrupting the conversation between the siblings. Yi Qing Luo lifted her leg and kicked the sack, raising her eyebrows. Xiaoyu, open the sack and see what's inside. Yi Fengyu squatted down and opened the gunny sack. Under Yi Qing Luo's instructions, he pinched the bottom of the gunny sack and threw the person inside, head first onto the ground. A dong sound was heard. A slender lady dropped out from the gunny sack. The lady's head crashed heavily onto the ground. Chapter 21-28. The lady was dressed in a jade-green long dress, and her clothes were in a mess. Her hair was like a chicken's nest, extremely messy as it covered her face. Moreover, her body was stained with blood, and her entire body was filled with horrifying wounds. No matter how one looked at her, she was in a sorry state. After the lady fell onto the ground, she rolled around in pain. Blood seeped out from her forehead, causing her disheveled hair to stick into a ball. Sister, this is... Yi Fengyu was shocked by the lady as he retreated a few steps towards Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo half narrowed her eyes as she sized up the lady who was lying on the ground. Her lips curled slightly as she snorted coldly. Zhu Wuxian's gift is indeed a good one. The favor that I owe him seems like I can't repay it off. Yi Fengyu looked at Yi Qing Luo in a daze, not understanding the meaning behind her words. Yi Qing Luo patted his head as she slowly walked towards the lady who was struggling and rolling on the ground. She looked down at that lady from high position. Miss Feng, long time no see. The lady's struggling and rolling action instantly came to a halt. Suddenly, the lady abruptly raised her head and threw that messy hair. Yi Qing Luo could clearly see a pair of murderous eyes. Woo! Woo woo! Woo woo woo! The lady cried out angrily. Her body was fluctuating along with her emotions as it kept shaking. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she totally didn't mind the lady's irritable emotions. She was still looking down from a high position, as though the lady was an ant beneath her feet. She smiled as her slender fingers caressed her lower jaw. Miss Feng is really pitiful. You were once so high up, but now you have fallen into such a state. I wonder how Xian would feel if he saw you in such a state. She mentioned the two words, Xian. The lady's resentment and viciousness became more and more obvious. The lady's struggles became more and more intense. The lady's cries became more and more anxious and furious. However, Yi Qing Luo stooped down again as she tilted her head and gave a chilly smile. I've forgotten that the only woman who can see my Xian is only me. Even if you're in such a disheveled state, my Xian wouldn't have any feelings at all. Yi Qing Luo's expression turned cold as she looked at Yi Qing Luo. Ugh! The woman's eyes widened, and her cries became even more ferocious. Yi Qing Luo stretched out her hand and brushed aside the lady's hair which was covering her face in disgust. The woman's face was reflected in his eyes. Yi Fengyu pointed at the woman in shock. Feng Ling, wasn't this woman the granddaughter of the Imperial Palace's granny? The one who is now wanted by the headquarters, and the entire Nirvana realm was chasing after her? It was actually her. Yi Qing Luo pulled out the smelly cloth from Feng Ling's mouth. Yi Qing Luo, you slut! Let go of me! Let me go! As soon as Feng Ling could speak, she started cursing. She no longer had the fairy-like temperament that she had in the past. Feng Ling hated Yi Qing Luo. He hated Yi Qing Luo so much that he couldn't wait to tear her into pieces. Yi Qing Luo had snatched away her most beloved brother Di. Yi Qing Luo had caused her to turn from the high and mighty Feng Ling into a wanted criminal. Now, no matter where she went, they had to hide and not appear in front of everyone. She was like a gloomy mouse. All these were thanks to Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo half squatted down. Her long and narrow eyes curved into a bloodthirsty smile. Feng Ling, Madame Yuqi, you killed her, am I right? Chapter 21-29. Yi Qing Luo's eyes sunk. Feng Ling really hated her. Seeing that she didn't want to kill Madame Yuqi, he thought that she didn't want Madame Yuqi to die. So in order to target her, he killed Madame Yuqi? How ridiculous! If she didn't want Feng Ling to die, was Feng Ling going to commit suicide to target her? Yi Qing Luo really couldn't understand this dumb woman's train of thought. Yi Qing Luo scoffed lightly. Then I should thank you for helping me settle my enemy, and even protecting my reputation. You. Wind chimes gritted her teeth and roared. You're using me. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. Who asked you to be so stupid? Madame Yuqi is after all the Yi family's second concubine. If I were to kill her, wouldn't I bear the infamy of killing an elder? This assassination of yours has actually resolved the problem in my heart. Feng Ling was so angry that her whole body trembled. She raised her hand and pointed fiercely at Yi Qing Luo as she bellowed furiously. Yi Qing Luo, aren't you trying to force me to meet you on my own accord by asking the headquarters to issue a wanted order? I'm telling you, you'll never be able to obtain the heart tranquility pearl. Yi Qing Luo smiled. Do you think you still have the right to speak now? Yi Qing Luo smiled and walked closer to Feng Ling. Feng Ling was frightened and wanted to retreat. However, the injuries all over her body left her without any strength. She could only look at Yi Qing Luo with an aghast expression as she closed in step by step. Zhu Wuxin gave you to me as a gift. Do you think that you still have a chance to escape? Yi Qing Luo lifted her chin and gave a look of disdain. Tsk. Feng Ling, actually I admire you. You actually hid for so long and didn't come to see me and even made yourself into such a state. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled upwards as she smiled brilliantly. You used to be so bright and beautiful, but now you're covered in a stench. Bitch, you slut. Feng Ling stomped her feet in anger, frantically trying to shake off Yi Qing Luo's hand. Feng Ling was infuriated. Yi Qing Luo's words had poked the most painful part of her heart. Her features were malevolent as she crazily opened her mouth, trying to bite Yi Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo suddenly released her lower jaw. Feng Ling had used too much strength. Without Yi Qing Luo's support, he fell on the ground and fell flat on his face. The bleeding on his forehead, which he had just managed to stop with great difficulty, broke his skin again. Feng Ling grimaced in pain, and her eyes were filled with hatred. Yi Qing Luo straightened her body and stepped on the back of Feng Ling's hand, which was propped up on the ground. She bent over and narrowed her eyes, which reflected a cold light. "Miss Feng, you know very well that in my heart, you can't even be considered as trash. If it wasn't for the fact that you have something that I want, I wouldn't even need to talk so much nonsense with you." Yi Qing Luo laughed softly. "I'm someone who doesn't like trouble. Either you give me the thing obediently, or I'll kill you and find the tranquil bead." If it wasn't for the little bit of relationship between DMO Xian and the Imperial Palace's old granny, she would have killed Feng Ling long ago. This Feng Ling had repeatedly played tricks behind her back to create trouble for her. The last time at the Dark Force's main camp, this woman even dared to make use of DMO Xian to agitate her and even hurt her. If not for the profound Heart Jade's protective consciousness, she probably wouldn't be able to hang on. "Bitch, kill me if you have the ability. I'll see how you're going to find the tranquil bead after you kill me." Feng Ling sneered without a single bit of fear. "Did you think that I would be so silly to keep the tranquil bead on me? If you kill me, the whereabouts of the tranquil bead will forever be a secret." Chapter 2130. Yi Qing Luo stepped on the back of Feng Ling's hand with increasing force. That ravishing face was blooming with a brilliant smile, as though the person who was stepping on Feng Ling's hand wasn't her. "Why? You can't bear to do it?" Feng Ling stared at her mockingly. "You know the importance of the tranquility pearl to you, so you don't dare to kill me, afraid that you can't get it, right?" As she said that, she laughed to herself. The expression on her face was filled with viciousness and madness. "Yi Qing Luo, I've said this before, if you want to get the tranquility pearl, exchange it with Brother D. As long as you return Brother D to me, this tranquility pearl is yours." Feng Ling's sinister eyes stared fiercely at Yi Qing Luo. "Miss Feng, you're a wanted criminal in the Nirvana realm. In this world, other than your grandmother, there's absolutely no one else who would help you." Yi Qing Luo bent down, and the force she used to step on Feng Ling's hand increased. Feng Ling grimaced in pain, but she didn't want to lose to Yi Qing Luo, so she didn't make a sound. Yi Qing Luo pretended not to notice Feng Ling's pain as her lips curled up and the weight of her body pressed down on her feet. She smiled lightly. "Because of this, you won't believe anyone, and you won't believe that any place is absolutely safe. Tranquility pearl. Such an important thing. Used to threaten me. How could you not bring it with you?" You." Yi Qing Luo smiled as she shook her head and interrupted Feng Ling. "Feng Ling, don't be in a hurry to deny it. I'm too confident in my own conjecture and can't wait to verify whether my conjecture is right or not." Her words paused as the smile on her lips became treacherous and bloodthirsty. "Why don't I kill you now and turn over your internal organs, even your profound jade heart and heart, to see if I can find a tranquility pearl?" When she finished her words, the smile enlarged in Feng Ling's eyes. "Feng Ling, are you interested in helping me to test my conjecture?" Feng Ling even forgot to cry out in pain as her eyes widened in disbelief, her eyes filled with shock. Feng Ling's face was filled with shock as her petite body trembled uncontrollably. The gaze she used to look at Yi Qing Luo was filled with fear. This kind of woman, this kind of deranged, cruel, and bloodthirsty monster. Why did Brother D like her? Apart from the fact that her face could also seduce men, what was so good about her? She was a monster. Wendling's pupil shrank and her breathing quickened. Feng Ling knew Yi Qing Luo's character. Yi Qing Luo said she wanted to rummage through her internal organs. Then she must be serious. Fear, the emotion of fear, continued to spread in his heart. Wendling shrank back in fear. He did not care about the scars all over his body. Calming, Calming pearl. I'll give you the calming pearl. Feng Ling's terrified voice trembled. But you have to promise me that you'll let me leave safely. I've always hated trouble. Yiqing Luo touched her chin and shook her head decisively. Wind Chime's pupils shrank even more. I promise. I promise I won't cause trouble for you. Let me go. Let me go. He looked at the woman who was begging him. On Yiqing Luo's face, there wasn't the slightest bit of change. Wind Chime's promise could not be trusted. But, thinking of DMO, Xian, thinking of the scene of him and the Imperial Palace's old granny going against each other, she finally closed her eyes as she heaved a long sigh and said, "Take out the calming pearl." Windling's eyes lit up with joy as she immediately flipped her palm and placed it on her forehead. A burst of profound energy spread out from Windling's palm. Chapter 21:31. Yiqing Luo smirked as she raised her eyebrows and stared at Feng Ling's forehead. Feng Ling had actually hidden the tranquility bead in her own mental energy. As expected of a world spiritist, his spirit power was so powerful. If it was her, there was absolutely no way for her to hide things in her mental power. She did not have such a strong spiritual power. Her spiritual power couldn't handle anything else. After Feng Ling took out the calming bead, she was so weak that she seemed to have no strength at all. She spread out her palm towards Yiqing Luo, set heart pearl. Yiqing Luo's finger moved slightly. The gourd flame fan unfurled and drew out a profound wave. The tranquil pearl immediately fell into Yiqing Luo's palm. Yiqing Luo's eyelids drooped as she pinched the crystal-clear little bead and looked at it carefully. The tranquility bead was extremely cold. It was like a small piece of ice covering her palm. I've already given you the item now. Can I leave? Feng Ling used all her strength to growl. Her malevolent face and vicious eyes stared fiercely at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her brows. Yes? You want to go back on your word? Feng Ling's face was filled with terror. Yiqing Luo, you promised me. Yiqing Luo maintained her enigmatic smile and didn't say a word. In reality, he was already calling out to Old Man Song in his heart, inquiring about the authenticity of this heart-calming bead. Yiqing Luo placed the tranquility pearl on the cherry blossom pattern on her arm. Old Man Song sensed it and said with certainty, "This heart-calming bead is real, and it doesn't hide any other power." The last time when Yiqing Luo was schemed against by the dark forces, she placed the profound heart jade, which contained profound yin qi, into her body. Old Man Song used 120% of his attention to examine anything that came from the outside. Deeply afraid that the situation of Yiqing Luo being controlled by Lao AI would happen once again, Yiqing Luo nodded her head. At least wind chimes knew her place. Her gaze swept past Feng Ling, who was curled up on the ground and shivering. Feng Ling met her gaze and cried out anxiously, "Yiqing Luo, I've already given you the calming orb. I won't bother you or Brother D anymore. I just want to live." She cried like a pear blossom in the rain. The cry for help was trembling. She kept choking with sobs. Windling continued to cry and beg for mercy. Yiqing Luo raised her hand to stop Feng Ling from making any noise. "All right, you may leave." "Sister." Yi Fengyu frowned in disapproval. Letting Feng Ling go was definitely not a good thing for his sister. Yiqing Luo shook her head at him. Yi Feng, you could only purse his lips and say no more. When Feng Ling heard this, her eyes lit up and she was wild with joy. Really? Then I'm leaving." Windling got up from the ground in a hurry. Her body was riddled with scars, and she couldn't muster any strength at all. But the thought that Yiqing Luo was still looking at her. Feng Ling gritted her teeth and took a deep breath, concentrating all of her profound energy on her feet. Then he flew out of the Three Springs sect residence at lightning speed. Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the horizon. Feng Ling, who had just used her breath to rush up the wall, flew back and crashed heavily into Madame Yuchi's bedroom. Feng Ling screamed in pain. His entire body was nearly smashed into pieces by this fall. "Yiqing Luo, you! How dare you lie to me?" Feng Ling was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Her facial features were sinister as she stared in front. But the moment she opened her eyes, she met with a pair of eyes that were filled with disbelief and hatred, and blood dripping onto her face. Chapter 21:32. The tentacle was a sticky substance. It was blood. It was also a hand of rotten flesh. Feng Ling was unable to suppress the fear in her heart as she screamed in terror. What she pushed earlier was Madame Yuchi's corpse. It was Madame Yuchi's corpse. Feng Ling's smash earlier had accurately smashed onto Madame Yuchi's bed. Madame Yuchi's festering skin, coupled with the knife wound on her throat, was extremely horrifying. This scene almost drove Feng Ling crazy. Her hands were filled with fresh blood and Madame Yuchi's rotten flesh. Feng Ling only felt her stomach churning. Yiqing Luo, who was standing at the door, got a shock. She looked at Feng Ling, who was screaming crazily on Madame Yuchi's bed. She looked at the direction of the energy which attacked Feng Ling earlier. Before she had time to think deeply, an extremely familiar scent of sandalwood assaulted his nostrils. Instantly, it filled Yiqing Luo's nose. Yiqing Luo's eyes suddenly widened, overflowing with uncontrollable joy. Her waist was tightly wrapped by a strong and powerful arm, as though it wanted to merge into her body. Hugging her tightly, Ah Xian! Yiqing Luo's heart was thumping wildly. It was Ah Xian. Her Ah Xian was back. The man's elegant sandalwood scent and the man's hormone scent surrounded Yiqing Luo's body. His deep, hoarse voice, like a mellow wine, sweet and charming. Lil Luo, I missed you. Just a few simple words made Yiqing Luo's heart soften suddenly. Her arms wrapped around his waist tightly, rubbing her little face on his chest. I missed you too. Thinking about it, they were only separated for a few days, but in just a few days, they already missed each other to the bone. Why are you back? Have you settled the Imperial Palace's matter? Yiqing Luo raised her head, gazing deeply at the man in front of her. After not seeing him for a long time, he was still that peerless, dignified, and noble. His forehead was still dripping with a thin layer of sweat. A few strands of black hair, scattered in front of his forehead, stuck by the sweat. It added a trace of evil charm to his beauty. Dmo Xian lowered his head, kissing her hard on her lips, settled. His kiss wasn't considered gentle, but it made her body tremble as if she had been electrocuted. Her little hands unconsciously clenched the front of Dmo Xian's clothes. Miss him. Miss her. This kiss conveyed the longing of the two people. Then, wind chimes' furious shouts came from Madame Yuchi's room. Big Brother D. Brother D, it's you. The two of them kissed each other until they couldn't separate from each other. Dmo Xian greedily stared at the charming face in front of him, as if inviting him to continue. His body tensed up. A ball of nameless flame surged towards the direction where he was squeezed 3 inches down. How could Yiqing Luo not understand the yearning in the man's eyes? She rolled her eyes and pushed Dmo Xian away. This beast was really thinking about that matter all the time. Stop fooling around. Feng Ling is still there. She was not that hardcore to do a live broadcast in front of others. Dmo Xian gave her another 2 ferocious pecks before releasing her. Then, he shifted his gaze to the woman in the room. It was just a momentary change. Dmo Xian's gaze was cold. The flame on his entire body at this moment was like an ice mountain covering him. Feng Ling's heart was in pain. All of a sudden, she thought of a sentence. Her big brother, D, wasn't warm. It was just that the person he wanted to be warm to was not her. Her lips trembled slightly, and after some time, she found her voice. Brother D, earlier it was you. Who stopped me? Chapter 21:33. As long as Dmo Xian said no, she would believe him unconditionally. Feng Ling's hopeful gaze stared unblinkingly at Dmo Xian. His face was so handsome that it took her breath away. She couldn't hide her love for him. His face moved her heart. Any factors that could harm Lil Luo must be eliminated. Dmo Xian said indifferently. This answer also admitted that the person who attacked Feng Ling just now was him. DMO, Xian hugged Yiqing Luo as he looked at Feng Ling calmly, without a single trace of emotion in his eyes. Feng Ling, this lord has said this before. This lord has put up with it on account of Grandma's face, but time and time again, you want to put Lil Luo to death. He paused and enunciated each word icily. So, anything that threatens Lil Luo that hurts Lil Luo this lord will personally shatter. Feng Ling's face instantly turned as pale as paper. She widened her eyes in disbelief, tears gushing out of her eyes as she shook her head frantically. I don't believe it. Brother D, I don't believe it. You're my brother D. Brother D wouldn't want my life for another woman. Dimo Xian looked at the tearful Feng Ling indifferently. He did not show the slightest bit of emotion. Feng Ling, I'll hang your head at the entrance of the Wind Emperor Palace. After Feng Ling and Imperial Palace's old granny made a move on Yiqing Luo time and time again. In the Imperial Palace, Granny and Wenqing took advantage of his absence to disperse most of the Imperial Palace's forces and built their own palace, establishing the Wind Imperial Palace. Their friendship had long since been severed. Feng Ling stared at Dmo Xian in shock. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Yiqing Luo, whom she viewed as her enemy, let her off. Brother D, whom she regarded as her lover and who was loyal to her, wanted to kill her. How ironic was this? Feng Ling's despairing gaze did not evoke a trace of sympathy or pity from Dmo Xian. Dmo Xian glanced sideways. The flames on his body and the contours of his face had softened. His thin lips curled up as he said warmly, Lil Luo wait for me at the door. It will be done in a while. Yiqing Luo grabbed Dmo Xian's sleeve. Xiano. She knew that Dmo Xian was doing all this for her. However, she valued Dmo Xian, just like how Dmo Xian valued her and was willing to go against his own elders for her. She did not wish for Dmo Xian to make a decision that he would regret in the future. Lil Luo, wait for me obediently. Dmo Xian bowed his head, sealing her words. When his lips parted from hers, Yi Zichen's eyes widened. Madame Yuchi's door suddenly closed. Before her eyes, Dmo Xian's figure had already disappeared. Yiqing Luo's fingers clenched tightly as she bit her lower lip lightly, looking at the tightly shut door. She sighed softly. Xian was really going to give up the past. If it was her, could she give up everything for Xian? Yiqing Luo's long eyelashes trembled slightly. Even she herself was unable to answer this question. Xian really loved her. To be able to meet and fall in love with Xian in this life was her greatest fortune. In the room, Wendling was still begging for mercy. With a sobbing tone, she expressed her feelings towards Dmo Xian, but was still unable to stop Dmo Xian's advance. Wendling's heart was like dead ashes as her hatred and jealousy towards Yiqing Luo soared at this instance. Brother D, don't tell me. Don't tell me you really have the heart to do this to little Ling? Don't tell me you really don't care about Grandma's feelings? Wendling sobbed softly. Chapter 21:34. Dmo Xian looked at Feng Ling calmly. There wasn't a trace of emotion in his deep, obsidian black eyes. That was a whirlpool covered with frost. Even if one was sucked in, they would die without a burial ground, but it still made one want to sink into the brilliance. Feng Ling's heart felt as though it was gripped tightly by a cold hand. She stared at Dmo Xian's face in a daze. Tears rolled down from the corner of her eyes. Her pitiful look couldn't move the man in front of her. After a few breaths, Dmo Xian walked to the bedside. Feng Ling looked at him with love and hate. Her pale lips were trembling. She clutched the blanket tightly. She didn't care that the blanket was covered with Madame Yuchi's blood. Feng Ling understood Dmo Xian's character very well. No one could change the things that Dmo Xian had decided on. If Dmo Xian wanted to kill her, in that case, he would really kill her. Feng Ling raised her head and looked at the godlike man. Her lips trembled as she asked, Brother D, before I die, I only want to know one thing. From the beginning to the end, did you ever have a place for Xiao Ling in your heart? Dmo Xian stopped in his tracks. His icy cold gaze swept past Feng Ling's face emotionlessly. His thin lips moved slightly as he said word by word, "Never." Feng Ling's pupils contracted as she laughed bitterly. Tears blurred her eyes. She shut her eyes in despair as she laughed bitterly. Kill me. To die in Brother D's hands, it's considered fulfilling one of my dreams. DMO, Xian raised his hand as profound energy gathered in his palm. In his heart, the only thing that could stay was Yi Qing Luo. You could say that he was heartless or cold-hearted. He would never exert a shred of affection on unimportant people. Feng Ling could clearly sense that powerful, profound energy. Her tears started to flow more violently. She thought that she would show weakness and show her feelings like this. On account of their past relationship, DMO Xian would at least spare her life. But she said so much, but it still couldn't make DMO Xian waver. Was his heart really made of stone? Feng Ling really wanted to dig out his heart to see how hard his heart was. The surging profound energy came crashing down. Wind Chime's heart leaped in her throat. He wanted to resist, but he was powerless. He could only close his eyes and wait for death to come. Suddenly, Feng Ling did not feel the tearing pain that she had been waiting for. Instead, she felt her body lighten. She was dragged into an embrace by some unknown force. Feng Ling opened her eyes in delight. Brother D, before he could finish, the smile on Windling's face froze. Little Ling, the old voice was extremely dignified. His sinister, wrinkled face was filled with anger. Feng Ling's heart skipped a beat. Tears kept gushing out. She suddenly leaned forward and cried bitterly, "Grandma, Grandma." The anger on the Imperial Palace's grandma's face finally subsided after hearing her granddaughter's cries. She lifted her withered hand and gently patted Feng Ling's back. She blamed her granddaughter for getting herself in such a state for a man. But at the same time, he felt sorry for his granddaughter. Listening to Feng Ling's cries, the heart of the Imperial Palace's granny also tightened. The Imperial Palace's granny clenched her teeth as she raised her sinister cold eyes and stared at the man in front of her. DMO Xian's palm strike earlier landed on thin air. The entire bed was blasted into smithereens. It could be seen that DMO Xian's palm strike earlier was totally merciless. He really wanted to kill Feng Ling. DMO Xian,